So thanks everyone for coming. I'm hoping some more folks will be joining us as we go along. But thanks for coming to the first candidate forum for the 2021 AMS election cycle that is hosted by the AMS Elections Committee and of course by the Ubyssey, who will be moderating. So yeah, Pavan is in charge. So feel free to direct your questions to them. And if you have questions specifically about elections that you want to send to me, you can, of course, send me a private message in the chat, or if you have questions that you would like to ask the candidates during the question period, you're welcome to put those in the chat as well. Just a friendly reminder, be friendly in the chat. Let's not try to be too disruptive, and yeah, treat everyone with respect and dignity. On to you, Pavan.
Thank you. All right, 1 second, let me rename myself to something more appropriate. Oh, it's too long. Right, so everyone, if we want to get started quickly, I want to, before anything else gets started, I want to give a quick land acknowledgement as people are coming in, and hopefully if a significant amount of people come in after this, then we'll do it again. I want to acknowledge that we're on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam people, but many of you probably tuned out as I was saying that because it's something you've heard since first year, so I want to kind of put a little spin on it, say something that you haven't heard. Politics is a hobby for some people, but it is a lifestyle and necessity for a lot of people. Today might be student politics and student governance, but there's a saying that goes like, the smallest waves are huge for the smaller ships, and to torture that metaphor a little bit, that's very applicable to marginalized people, particularly Indigenous peoples in Canada. So I hope we all keep that in mind as we move forward today, particularly to all the candidates and to whomever is successful from the candidates. So yeah, that is the land acknowledgement. Right, so my name is Pavan. I am the coordinating editor of the Ubyssey, and the Ubyssey is moderating this debate. Thanks to all the setup from Isabel and her team for all of the great work they've put into creating this elections. So this debate rather. So let me explain the format of this debate. It's going to be right. So we're going to have, I believe there's four. We're going to have four debates going on. That will be President, VP Academic and University Affairs, Admin, then the Board of Governors after the break. And for all of those, the rules are as follows. So we'll have an opening period of 30 seconds, an opening statements period, where each candidate in the debate will have 30 seconds to make their opening statement, and then 30 seconds at the end for a closing statement. And then each candidate will receive 3 questions from the Ubyssey and 1 from the audience. For each of those questions, they will get 2 minutes. Each individual candidate will get 2 minutes to answer the question. And at the end of the line of candidates, we'll have 3 minutes of open debate where anyone can ask a question and engage with each other, so long as it's respectful and no one monopolizes the time. So yeah, I hope that's clear. It'll become apparent as we continue on. So yeah, Isabel, do we want to wait for more people to come in, or?
Yeah, so we already have a question about the prize giveaway. So we will be doing that in 2 stages. Once during the break, Mona, our events officer, will do a draw for, I believe, one of the big prizes and a couple of the gift cards, and then at the end, do the other half of the prizes. So there's that. Yeah, we can.
Stop.
Oh yes. And yeah, we can take a couple more seconds, but I would just like to invite anyone to share whose land they're on, sort of as a follow-up to the land acknowledgement, because yeah, UBC's on Musqueam territory, but I'm out in Kitsilano, so that's shared territory between the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and the neighborhood itself, Kitsilano, comes from a hereditary name in the Squamish Nation. But if anyone else wants to share that, could you?
Yeah.
But if not, I think we can just get started. I'm sure some people arrive the first debate, I believe, is president, and I believe that all the candidates for president are currently here. So there you go.
Cool. All right, so then we'll get going. Right, so we have
one question. Sorry. Do you have, like, I think our agenda we can send as well. You've seen them. And do you have just a copy of the rules that we could like send in the chat, just to, because our agenda I don't believe has the open debate on it. But
oh, are you sure? At the top of the Form 1 agenda, it says the 3 minutes of open debate.
I'm just not seeing it then.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
I'm happy to paste it into the chat. Or I'll send it to you. You can approve it, and then we can throw it in the chat. As you can tell, Ams Elections ex Ubyssey is just, man, you couldn't believe.
Especially in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And candidates, just as a word to the wise, I once Isabel makes me co-host, I will have the power to mute you. So, if you go out over time by a few seconds, that's okay. If you start, giving me a little bit of pontification, I'm more than happy to stop you from talking. So, yeah, thank you. So we get to go ahead, Isabel?
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. All right. So let's start with the. Oh yes, thank you, Georgia. That's a great point. At 15 seconds out, I'll raise my hand and I'll be like I'll raise my hand as a nonverbal cue that you have 15 seconds left in to answer your question, as well as in the open debate period and the opening and closing statements. Thank you. Boy, oh boy. Right. Okay. Now I'm pretty sure we're ready to go. So Cole, you get to be our guinea pig. So Cole, you're the candidate running for president. Please give us your opening statement.
Thanks, Robin. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. I guess we'll jump right into it and get to, a lot of people have asked me why I'm running for re-election for president. And, I think that this year's been a crazy year. It's definitely not what, we expected when we were at this time last year with elections. But I feel like there's still a lot of work that's still outstanding that needs to be done. And more importantly, I feel like there's a lot of work that, I still have to give to the organization. And so being able to create a platform that is not only as robust as ever, that, builds on our successes from the past year, but also, learns from, our mistakes and where we haven't done so well. And so I'm very excited to be running for re-election.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. So moving on into the question part of the debates. Normally it'll run alphabetically, but given that we only have one, just be Cole. Right, so Cole, your first question is, the AGM this year met quorum for the first time in several years, but faced criticism from students about methods, procedures, and transparency. Whether it's online or in person, how would you respond to this criticism in planning next year's AGM?
Yeah, it was such a successful AGM. But I think, those students who mentioned that a little bit, rushed, I completely hear that. I think that, there's one thing I would have done differently this past year would have been to, maybe take a bit more, developing those bylaw changes rather than just assuming that they're not that major changes and, do a little bit more work, not only at council, but in the community as far as proposing that. So I think that whenever we're bringing, potential changes like that to what is the most significant governing document in the society, it's important that we are robustly engaging with our membership and, other leaders in the AMS on that document. So, I still stand by everything that we changed. But, I think, and I also don't think that, we should be creating a habit of, passing a slew of bylaw changes at every single AGM. But I think that, moving forward, when it comes to anything that we do around governance, it's important that, while I get really excited about, all the potential changes we can make and how we can make things better, I think sometimes it's important to, make sure that we're being a bit more methodical in our approach.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Right. So now you have, I guess, wait, yeah. So that'll be 3 minutes of open debate. If you have anything else to say, you've only used a minute 25 of your time. So, you know.
Well, I mean, I guess I can use a little bit more time at least to fill some of my speaking time. And I think that on the topic of governance of the AMS, I think there's still a lot of things that we can do better, to make the organization work better for students and make the organization itself more efficient. And another question that I've gotten a lot, on the topic of governance is, well, why haven't if you want to do all these changes, why didn't you do it, while you were in office this past year? And I think it takes a long time to be able to evaluate where these issues are and these pressure points, and to be able to develop a plan to execute them appropriately. Also, not to mention that we also have a large organization with a lot of staff and a lot of moving parts, and it's also important not to leave those individuals behind. So sometimes there's going to be conflicts between what what council wants to do to what the rest of the organization wants to do, but having been in the organization now for 2 years, I feel like I've been in a good position to be able to, really have a robust understanding of, where those pressure points exist, and how we can mobilize on those pressure points to create more efficient governance structure in the organization.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. There's a great point from Isabel. Maybe instead of open debate, quote unquote, we can do more audience participation. So in these 3 minutes per open debate thing, we have maybe an audience question. Then you have like a minute to answer, because even that's the normal time for an audience question response. Isabel,
yeah, I'm good with whatever.
I mean, yeah, you'll be fine with whatever. But Isabel, is that what you're thinking? Nice, cool. A direct message. She said yes. All right, so folks, to clarify, for those in the audience, think of some questions that you would like to ask Mr. Evans here, and throw them in the chat. And one of my editors, which question that they would prefer, just because there's a lot of moving parts here. So yeah, think of a question, put it in the chat, and then we'll be able to ask Mr. Evans more than just one. Right. So next question. Our next question is, in equity plan consultation, students said that the AMS has a, quote, oppressive culture, end quote, and has had systemic racism, tokenism, and a lack of racial representation. Beyond acknowledging your own privilege, how would you address these concerns in the development of the AMS equity plan and in the rest of your work? You have 2 minutes. Or sorry, 2 minutes.
Awesome, thanks, Bobbin. Lily, my associate equity and inclusion, and Adeline, the consultant we've been working with, have done an excellent job this year working away on the equity plan. And one of the things that they did, a lot of you might have seen, was they released a survey to gather some data around how students feel about the AMS when it comes to equity. They've hosted a number of workshop sessions around it. And there's a lot of interesting and really eye-opening things that we've learned throughout this process. And an issue that the AMS has had when it comes to equity for as long as I've been around is the work that we do on EDI is very much dependent on who's in office in any given year and which staff are in office in any given year. So let's look back to before this year, where most of the equity work that was being done in the organization was coming out of almost exclusively the VP External's office. And when you think about it, the VP External is of course equity is a big part of their work, but not necessarily should they be doing work that is internal to the organization. So what we need to do is we need to create sustainable ways of ensuring that equity is addressed at the AMS. So the equity plan is a great first step. We're creating a framework that we can look to every single year and track progress on to make sure that we're meeting KPIs on how we're addressing equity targets. But also another point in my platform is we also need to not have that lie on one person exclusively in the organization. We need to build a more robust personnel structure in the organization that can make sure that we're following through on those commitments, and that we're also, implementing oversight mechanisms like a subcommittee type structure to oversee progress on the equity plan, similar to how we run the AMS Sustainable Action Plan, to make sure that there's continued progress in the organization when it comes to EDI.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Yeah, is there questions from the audience? Give a couple of seconds for people to write them in. I can see that there's some riveting ones in this chat already. Right, so I don't know if there's any questions from the audience at this time. Actually, what? There's a couple of questions now. Oh boy, there's a couple of questions. Right, so I'll let my editors to let me know which questions, and we next one. Right, so this last question is going to come, last Ubyssey provided question, then we'll do audience ones, is very few committees have presented motions to council this year, and most motions come from the executive. How would you change the committee system to make it more functional? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think this goes back to sort of what I was talking about in the first question about, where can we make tweaks and improvements to our governance structures to, ensure that, we have effective, governance systems in place in the organization. So you see some committees like governance committee, which are, have full agendas all the time. They're always making changes. They're tasked with things. Finance committee is very similar. But then you have, some committees that aren't as busy. Student life committee, advocacy committee. So how are we adjusting, the scopes of those committees to make sure that they have stuff that they can do on a regular basis, and they have, lines of oversight into the relevant areas in the organization? That's one thing. Number 2 is we need to do a much better job of transitioning our counselors into council. We need to make sure that the expectations of counselors are clear. We need to make sure that we're keeping them informed of what they're able to do and what they're responsible for. And we need to sort of do a better job of, with committee chairs when they come in, getting them more involved in the more operational side rather than just existing in the sphere of AMS council. An example of something that we're going to try out that's coming to council tomorrow actually is to have more frequent steering committee meetings to make sure that chairs are more engaged in agenda setting, and there's more of a peer accountability mechanism to make sure that all committees are doing things and sending things, and if you haven't heard something from a committee for a while, that you can talk about it in that setting. So there's a lot of things that we can try out to make things work a little bit better. And I don't put blame for that on counselors at all. We have a great council this year. We have a great group of committee chairs this year, and it's more so, again, just going back to revisiting our governance structures to make sure that they're set up in a way that supports our committee chairs to be able to effectively do their work, rather than sort of leaving it just up to committee chairs to go and find work to do themselves when they're only working for 3 hours a week.
Mr. Evans. Yeah, so now I've got plenty of audience questions to go through. So, yeah, the first one, and given that this is going to be going until 5:30 on the agenda, I plan to keep you for a minute of that. Sorry, the first question is: do you find it so concerning that there are so few candidates running for AMS positions this year? You have 1 minute.
Definitely find it concerning. I think this year is, potentially an outlier. We'll have to see, by the end of it, what voter turnout and stuff looks like. With COVID and, whether people's focus is on, the AMS and, student governance life, or, whether they're worried about other things, whether people being on campus, inhibits their, feeling of their ability to run. That's, one potential factor. But aside from that, I think that there is a lot more that we can do to, set up people in a way that it makes them feel more comfortable about running. We have 3 uncontested executive races this year. last year we've had the VP Finance race has been uncontested for 2 years in a row now. We had a VP AUA race uncontested before that. We've had probably in the last 5 years, we've had numerous uncontested executive races. So we as an organization need to come up with a better way of, supporting candidates, potential candidates.
Thank you. Good stuff. Our next audience question is, the writer of this question comes from members of the Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim communities on campus. They ask, or this person asks, how are you looking to enhance on the equity and inclusion of these groups specifically, especially when we have been harassed, we being them, have been felt harassed or sidestepped when it comes to issues that matter to them. For example, SPHR, the Palestinian club on campus, has been harassed to the point of intimidation a couple of times when they moved in the nest, and when they've tried to file a complaint, they allege that they've been brushed off. You have 1 minute.
I think to hear that is especially concerning to me. The fact that people feel like they're valid concerns about being harassed have been brushed aside. I endeavor in my work, and the organization should endeavor to take very seriously whenever it comes up. The work that we've done with the equity plan this year, and when I say we, I am referring to the work that led by Lily and her predecessor Nikki and Will before that, and the equity advisory committee have done this year. Have made a real effort to try and balance all the different concerns and real issues that have been brought up by different groups of students from different religions on campus. And so that's something that I know that they're very actively trying to tie into the framework of the equity plan, and that's something that we fully intend on delivering.
I think that the person who was asking this question was asking for a bit more specificity. I'm going to give you 15 more seconds to maybe add anything in particular for SPHR or members of the Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim communities on campus.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about the equity plan, I think that the intention is to definitely focus on some of those communities that have been more adversely affected by things like harassment. So the Palestinian, Arab, Muslim community is definitely one of them. We've seen a lot of anti-Asian racism as well, and of course anti-Black racism. So finding those specific groups that we can support better through the equity plan framework.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I believe that's all of the audience questions that we have. Time for 1 or 2 more. If anyone in the chat wants to slide them in, you've got the an unopposed person running for president. Maybe you want to throw some 1 or 2 things in there. None. So I'll give a few seconds for my editors to let me know if there's any questions. But just as a reminder to everyone, in the uncontested races, we made an ad hoc change that instead of having open debate, we're going to have more space for audience questions. So for the opportunities that we have over these next couple of days for the uncontested races, please feel free to send us your questions in the chat or on Facebook, on our live stream, or on Twitter, or anywhere that you see the word Ubyssey. Right, so we have another question here. How did you encourage and promote getting involved in AMS elections as a president interested in his own re-election? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, so that's been a bit of a challenge this year because unfortunately I've made a point of not involving myself too much in elections-related activities. Knowing that I will be running, so with the conflict of interest, rules around that of me, organizing things around elections when I myself will be a candidate. So, I think that's, that nothing changes from our perspective as executives. It's from the way I approach things is, if somebody approaches me about running, I'll be honest with them. I think that honesty is an important factor. It's important to still encourage these people to do what's best for them, but being honest with them, and again, if I'm reelected next year, I will definitely not be running. I fully intend on developing or playing a much more active role in that.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. I think we have time for two more questions. So the question is, what's one thing you'd improve looking back on your term, and one thing that you think you did well as president? 1 minute.
Yeah, I got this question at EUS Council last night, and it's the reason why it's hard for me to choose one thing to improve is because I think there's a lot of things that need to be improved on. I think one thing that I could have done, better is sort of, I mentioned, is bridge that gap a bit better between council and everything that's going on there and our student staff, and being proactive about that, and how we responded to the AMS event situation, and things like that, I think could have been handled better from my part. Something that I think we did really well this year is I think that we adapted really well to the COVID environment. We were playing it by ear a lot of the year, and it was a year like never before, but we were able to still do a lot of really great things in the organization, and create a lot of new initiatives amidst even the craziness that was 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Evans, Brandon Klein. And our last question. However, I want to let everyone know that I've seen a number of great questions in the chat. We're going to keep those in our back pocket for the great debate, just because we can't keep Mr. Evans here for longer than a lot of time, or I would love to, but we do have other things to be doing. But yeah, so your questions will not be ignored. There's plenty of more debate to come. So the last question for the president at this time or for the presidential candidate at this time is, Council recently passed a motion to write a statement for the situation in Hong Kong. How do you aim to ensure Chinese students are not attacked because of this stance? You have 1 minute.
Similar before, we at the AMS, we have and will always have zero tolerance for any harassment or bullying or targeting of certain groups on campus. And we're talking about these, upholding the rights and freedoms of individuals living in Hong Kong. That's something that the AMS has always stood by for decades. We're an organization that supports fundamental human rights and freedoms around the world, regardless of where they're located. And we don't see that as being a political statement. We think that people have certain rights that they should be able to exercise in democratic countries, and we should always be striving for that. And we will continue to advocate for that in everything that we do. So I think that it's important to think about these statements as being apolitical, and it's more about sticking up for human rights rather than country or politics.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. And that brings us to the end of the presidential debate for today. So yeah, everyone give a virtual round of applause to your candidate. Very good, very raucous. So right, so thank you, Mr. Evans, for attending and answering all of those questions, and we'll see you at the great debate. Moving on, we have up next we have our VP Academic and University Affairs debate, which has two candidates. So it'll be a little less time for audience questions, but still very rousing, I'm sure. Can both candidates please turn on their cameras? Hello, candidate Bungu, and hello, candidate Mehta. Cool. Right, so just as a reminder to everyone, we have the 30-second opening, 2 minutes to answer each Ubyssey question, 3 minutes at the end for open debate, then audience questions at the end. And so I'm so sorry, I forgot, Mr. Evans, you deserve a closing statement. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, I'm okay with everything, remember, so I'm all good.
All right, 30 seconds.
Sure. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for again coming out. We have 67 people here. That's awesome. I think the important thing, for me is I've learned a lot from my experience this year, and I think going into next year, I really want to build on this experience from this year, but again, continuing to deliver the same honest and passionate leadership that UC students for the past 2 years. So I hope to be able to continue working with you, and hope to see you all at the great debate on Saturday as well. Thanks everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Now you can really leave. All right, so candidates Bangu and Mehta, your turns. So let's get an opening statement from both of you, starting alphabetically with Ashana Bangu. You have 30 seconds.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashana Bangu, and I'm running to be your next VP AUA. I've had the honor of serving you as your senator this past year, and I want to continue fighting for you as your VP AUA by creating a holistic affordability plan, ensuring a safe return to in-person, keeping international, disabled, immunocompromised students a priority, and increasing rapid testing capacity on campus. I'll create a policy to cap the cost of all learning materials, not just digital, and I will get rid of and severely restrict all algorithmic remote and visualization softwares. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Bangu. Candidate Mehta, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. So hi folks, thank you so much for being here. My name is Shivani, my pronouns are she and her. This past year I've had the pleasure of being the Associate Vice President Academic at the AMS. In this role I've learned a lot about Ubyssey governance and Senate policies. This is built off my extensive involvement in Ubyssey communities through the undergraduate societies and student programs like Collegia, Jumpstart, and Orientations. These experiences have inspired me to run for this position as VP AUA, and I've designed a platform that outlines how I will bridge the gap between people and policy at Ubyssey. I look forward to sharing my ideas with you all tonight and answering some of the questions.
Thank you, candidate Mehta. All right, so moving on to the first question. So, COVID-19 has transformed the academic experience and will have lasting effects on the academic experience at Ubyssey. How will you support students in transitioning out of online learning? We're going to go reverse alphabetical here. So, candidate Mehta, you have 2 minutes, starting now.
Sure, thank you so much for the question. So this has been definitely a topic with lots of and I think the most important thing to recognize is students are coming back to campus, or they will be transitioning back to campus from various positions around the world or domestically, and they need to have the necessary support. So for the students that are not able to come back, I'm advocating for lecture recording infrastructure to be added to all the lectures theaters that will be opened and part of our plan for reopening in September to ensure that there is an equitable access to learning and lectures as we transition back into this hybrid learning phase. It's also important to recognize that faculty members have been under a lot of stress recently, and so part of my role as Associate Academic Vice President Academic this year has been sitting on the hybrid teaching and learning proposals where we're evaluating exactly how the different strategies and approaches to learning will be beneficial to each faculty specifically. And so through this research and through my experience, we're really hoping to have a holistic approach that accounts for the needs of domestic and international students, as well as the faculty and their resources that they will be provided with to ensure that everybody has equal access to learning as we transition back onto campus. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Mehta. Candidate Bangu, do you need a question repeated or do you got it?
Yeah, if I can be a pain, can you please repeat the question?
No worries. Finally, yeah. COVID-19 has transformed the academic experience and will have lasting effects on the academic experience at Ubyssey. How will you support students in transitioning out of online learning? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's extremely important that our students feel well supported, academically, of course, but also it's pretty clear, judging by the past Senate meeting, that in-person instruction is very much on the table for this fall. And I'd like to make sure that those decisions are communicated very early. I think currently the administration is planning for around mid-May, end of May, in line with the registration schedule. I'd like to push that date to be much earlier. We really need to keep in mind students who are immunocompromised, students who have disabilities, international students who will be struggling to make last-minute travel arrangements, last-minute living arrangements, and of course, students with vulnerable family members. So it's very important that we ensure that while we are transitioning back in person, but the virus doesn't seem to be just magically disappearing. It's important that we keep options open and make sure we're not leaving these students and groups to fight their own battles when the time comes to come back in person. Of course, I am very passionate about hybrid learning and continuing open educational resources like recorded lectures as well, post-pandemic. I think it's important to expand the infrastructure for recording lectures across the board, across all faculties, because currently some faculties have far better infrastructure when it comes to recorded lectures as opposed to other faculties. So I'd really like to advocate for that. But top and foremost, it is so essential that we keep our students safe. It is so essential that we're not leaving out any groups. And I think it's important that these decisions about academic learning are made in a very centralized and coordinated manner. So these students aren't left trying to scramble, finding options when time comes. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, candidate Bungu. So for the first open debate of tonight, well, real open debate, as a reminder to everyone, the candidates will have 3 minutes to talk about the topic for this one being transitioning, supporting students in transitioning out of online learning. And yeah, no individual candidate will be allowed to monopolize the time. I'll be cutting in to make sure that things are equitable, and please, don't do mudslinging, but beyond that, no holds barred. Go ahead, 3 minutes. Anyone can start.
What are we supposed to do?
You can ask each other questions. You can, call each other out on points that you've made, or compare your plans that you've laid out, or take more time to talk about your plans in general. You can recite a poem for all I care.
Ishana, would you like to go first?
For sure. Open debate. I am looking forward to going back in person. I think it's very important I'll just elaborate on some things I'm very passionate about. Currently, the rapid testing capacity on campus is quite low. It's only happening at Orchard Commons, and a lot of upper year students and residences are left, excluded from this pilot project. And I understand about starting at a small scale, but I think it's really important that we now move and start expanding. And especially since we're already making decisions or having conversations about going back in person and post-COVID and the new normal and hybrid learning, it is so essential that we make sure everybody's safe on campus. So I'm really going to be pushing for that as your next VP AUA, if I have the honor to be your next VP AUA. And apart from that, I think hybrid learning is something that can really ease issues that Ubyssey students have faced over the past years, even space issues. I think there are very interesting discussions that can be taking place. For example, what if we look at a model that has 2 days in person and 1 day online? That would save commuter students who go hours on buses. And so I live in Surrey, so commuting from Surrey is insane. It's so long. So I know how a commuter would feel. So I think it's important to see that there's a really rethinking that can be happening here. And that's what I'll be pushing for, to ensure that no students are left out. And I hope I'm not monopolizing the time here. Shivani, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I'll just wait for you to wrap up. All good.
Okay. Sure then. Yeah, I definitely will be ensuring for a safe and smooth transition to back in person in post-COVID and as we embrace the new normal as your next VP AUA. So I'll give the floor over here.
Thank you. This is probably the weirdest debate you've ever seen, Bowen. That's so funny. I completely agree. In-person transition is more than just academics. My role outside of the AMS, I'm actually part of the Center for Student Involvement and Careers. So the past 3 years, I've been working closely with Start. A lot of our conversations are regarding controlling the spread of the virus outside of academic time. So if you have important conversations happening within classrooms and lectures and obviously things like that, but what about controlling the student atmosphere, making sure that social distancing is being followed and all of the necessary guidelines are being taken care of. I'm sorry, I thought that we had equal amount of time to share our ideas.
In the forum, in the agenda, it says candidates each receive 2 minutes to answer the question, followed by 3 minutes of open debate. Parenthetical, where anyone can speak and they may question and engage with each other. So it's 3 minutes total. And in all the debates past, including the point grade debates, the open debate has been a thing. I apologize if I didn't make that clear earlier, but yeah, that's the end of the time for the open debate. So moving on. Second question, and this will begin with candidate Bungu. Immunocompromised students have been often left out of conversations around COVID-19. Immunocompromised students have been often left out of conversations around COVID-19's effect on students. How would you support those students if elected? Candidate Bungu, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. Perfect question. I love that. That's something I'm very passionate about advocating for. Even at the last Senate meeting, there were discussions about going back in person, and immunocompromised students are definitely, they need to be a priority. And they're also immunocompromised staff and students who have immunocompromised family members. So it's a large group of students who shouldn't be left out of this process and who shouldn't feel alone and abandoned by the university they choose to call home. So I'll be ensuring that when we're looking at the immunocompromised uh, students, we're ensuring that we're increasing our rapid testing capacity. We're also having a plan for immunizations on campus for students who have difficulties, whether even if it's international students coming from their home country and they're not properly immunized yet. And apart from that, I think it is essential that when we are transitioning back in person, we don't just go back to the way things were. It is essential that we retain online options as well for students who are not comfortable participating in in-person learning because of their health. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Bundu. Candidate Mehta, would you like a repeat?
No, that's okay. Thank you.
2 minutes.
So I'm just going to continue on about a couple of points I wanted to make before with regarding the transition back onto campus. It's important for us to be able to consider the student experience outside of academics. And what that means is ensuring that international students, commuter students, and immunocompromised students are still feeling like they're part of the community. Part of the planning that we've been doing in orientations and Jumpstart is making sure that there are coordinated and organized events being held on campus, hopefully if the transition does go through, to make sure these students have a chance to build their community and their learning kind of their learning at Ubyssey and through the rest of their degrees, even if they are facing challenges that other students may not be facing. And so it's very important for us when we're talking about the transition to online learning to make sure that we have support from SRS, so the safety and risk services at Ubyssey, and making sure that we're not overly relying on student staff such as res advisors to be breaking up parties and group activities that are happening outside of class time, and making sure that we're also not relying heavily on campus security. There's a lot of thought and a lot of processes that need to be thought out before we rush into a transition into in-person learning to make sure that all of these groups are being taken care of and that we have a safety plan in place without putting student staff and campus security at the forefront and making these services that aren't designed.
Is it
my internet? Oh no, okay.
It might be mine.
Here, I'll give you an extra like 5 seconds for that. No worries.
I'm not sure where I cut off. I'm so sorry.
Maybe like go back a couple of sentences.
Campus security.
Yeah. Okay. So campus security, and residence advisors and student staff that are paid to do these kind of responsibilities and enforce things on campus. We want to make sure that we have the right individuals that are responsible for enforcing health guidelines on campus when we do this transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Mehta. And unfortunately, you were the first example of connectivity issues tonight. Folks in the audience, just, it's not a comment on a candidate if they've got a bad Wi-Fi connection. I've got terrible, and I'm the best one here. Sorry, that was a joke. Right, so thank you, Candidate Mehta and Candidate Bundu. Moving on to the 3 minutes of open debate. This open debate's topic is specifically immunocompromised students, but also students at risk in general when it comes to transitioning back to regular schooling. So yeah, 3 minutes of open debate. Anyone can say it. Let's kick off.
Sure, I guess so for sure is the #1 priority. Of course, the experience outside of the classroom is also very important, but health is wealth, as they say. So I think safety is the #1 priority for immunocompromised students. Again, I cannot iterate this enough. There needs to be clear and centralized and coordinated decisions being made by the administration and very early, and ensuring that we're not leaving departments and units to make their own separate decisions, because I know that will also severely disadvantage immunocompromised students and students who are at risk, who might be told by their faculty that, okay, actually, no, you need to come in. Sorry, we don't have that infrastructure for you. Our plan is this, and you have to stick by it. So I think that centralized nature of this decision is very important. And apart from that, just reevaluating everything with the lens and having immunocompromised students, students at risk, and also students with family members who are at risk. So yeah.
No, I completely agree with what Ishana mentioned. I think the only difficulty with making a decision earlier than May is that we won't have enough time to react to a vaccine rollout. Right now, we don't have enough information as to what the parameters are, which lecture classrooms, things are available to faculty members. So for example, if we have a certain population of students that don't have access to vaccines and we've promised everybody to come back to campus, now we have this influx of students that are paying to stay at Walter Gage because after May, they will no longer be able to have free quarantining services provided to them. So there are all these additional things that we need to be considering, that if we are to make a declaration in April that everybody is welcome to come back to campus, we are committed to a transition to in-person learning, and we are not able to provide the services and resources to follow through with that claim, it will put even more students at risk. And the university has a responsibility to maintain that integrity and commitment to what they've said. It would truly be heartbreaking to have a lot of students spending their energy, their time, getting their hopes up to come back to campus and experience college the way that they've always dreamed of, just to be told that now they need to find emergency housing in Vancouver, which we all know is ridiculous. And on top of that, summer is normally where we have an influx of cases in the community. And so no matter where they go, our population is the one that's responsible for spreading it the most, as we saw this past summer, is the demographic of 20-year-olds going out. So there are a whole bunch of risks that we need to be considering when we're talking about immunocompromised and international students. And so that's why I believe that we need to be more cautious before making a declaration as early as April.
I think it's important to note that when I say declaration, I don't mean declare that everybody can come back to campus, but an idea of the decision that they're planning on making, a percentage of the classes they're holding in person. I think it's unfair to say that I'm claiming that the administration and back in person in the fall.
And that'll bring us to the end of the open debate. Thank you. Right. So yeah, let's move on to the last question, and then we'll do an open audience question. It looks like the chat is popping up, so I'm very happy about that. So our last question for this debate is: Proctorio has come under heavy fire for various ethical concerns. As Ubyssey searches for a replacement, how would you balance academic integrity and student privacy in those discussions? I believe candidate Mehta is first. Is that true? Yeah, go ahead, candidate Mehta.
Thank you. So Proctorio has definitely been one of the projects that I've been focusing on for the past year in my role as Associate VP Academic. This has included making submissions to the Teaching and Learning Committee about our priorities and making presentations about exactly what are the equity concerns with Proctorio. And I think it's really important for us to address this issue with a two-pronged approach, if you will. The first being policy and ethics parameters around what tools we're allowed to use at Ubyssey. We actually had a contract with Proctorio before the move to online learning. And so we need a proper ethics framework in place that is beyond just FIPA compliance of a tool, but really the algorithms that this tool will use to judge whether or not students are maintaining integrity in their coursework. The second piece to this is obviously community engagement. A huge part of my leadership style and my values is engaging with other leaders on campus. And so I've been working with the vice presidents, academics of undergraduate societies to encourage the pharmacy, which uses Proctorio, to host town halls, engaging with LFS, which has recently outlawed Proctorio, which is fantastic, on data-driven advocacy. And by communicating the needs and concerns of students directly from their elected leadership to the leadership that we report and talk to, such as the Student Senate group, as well as council, as well as advocacy committee, so the executive committee. It's all about having a clear line of communication, make sure that everybody's concerns are being lifted to the highest platform of leadership. I hope to continue this in my work and the Academic Integrity Working Group, as well as challenging the new Academic Integrity Director, who's a member of the Provost's office. And I've detailed all of these in my platform quite extensively. So I've done a lot of research and collaboration with other student unions around the nation, actually, in progressing this work.
Thank you, candidate Mehta. Candidate Bongo, do you need a repeat? Cool. Proctorio has come under heavy fire for various ethical concerns. As Ubyssey searches for a replacement, how would you balance academic integrity and student privacy in those discussions? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually do serve on the Academic Integrity Working Group as the co-chair of the Student Senate Caucus. And I know everybody is really concerned about algorithmic remote invigilation softwares like Proctorio. I agree that we really need to look at parameters beyond if it's just FIPA compliant. Because sure, privacy is basically covered by FIPA. I think it's more than privacy; it's an issue of equity, accessibility, and really what students want. And students have been very clear that they just don't want Proctorio. Actually, at the Teaching and Learning Committee of the Senate, there's already a motion being drafted to severely restrict the usage of Proctorio across all faculties. And we did have a consultation period to which I believe the AMS and the GSS did not make a submission, and then we had to extend that period. So that this is an ongoing process. This is something we're working on. When it comes to that, I'd like to actually advocate for complete elimination of any sort of remote invigilation software that is algorithmic and presents these kind of concerns. But of course, I know that there are certain faculties that have, very tough accreditation requirements, like the Faculty of Law, Allard. But even in that, there's around a few 400, 500 level courses that really need a remote invigilation software, and that the NCA has specified that it needs to be Proctorio. It can't be ExamSoft. It can't be anything else. It needs to be Proctorio. So I would encourage that complete elimination of these softwares. And if for some reason we cannot eliminate, that we have extreme specificity in terms of why we need to use these kind of softwares at all, and not Proctorio. We need to get rid of that for sure. Why we need these softwares at all, and on top of that, what courses, so the students know exactly what they're getting into. So, yeah.
Thank you, Canada. I just muted myself as I was talking. Thank you, Canada Bunker. I just realized my Slack also you might hear some boings going off. I'm very sorry about that. That's my Slack notification. It's a proof that I'm hard at work. Right. So we've got plenty of really good questions in the chat. Oh boy, one of the drawbacks of this is that there's so many good questions. So yeah, we've got time for maybe 2 questions and then a closing thing, but then we'll ensure that we factor in more time for audience questions in the great debate, hopefully. Although that might make it go a little bit longer. But yeah, we'll figure something out. But rest assured, your questions will be ignored, audience peoples. So I've got a couple of questions here for you. I'll start with this. Yeah, starts with candidate Bangu. This next one is going to be about the VP AUA's work with SV Pro and SASC. So, and you have 1 minute to respond. So, what are your plans for continuing the VP AUA's work with SV Pro, the SASC, and other student leaders for improving survivor-centric, trauma-informed initiatives when it comes to sexual violence education and creating a culture of consent once we can return to in-person campus life? And in addition to that, are there certain groups that are priority? You have 1 minute, but feel free to ask me for clarification.
Yeah. Can you just I'll just go ahead and answer that. So for sure, I know I've done a lot of research about SC17. I'm very passionate about taking care of sexual assault survivors and sexual violence on campus. I know that there's a group that's been formed for the implementation of the recommendations made by SASC, and as VP AUA, I would like to oversee these implementation, a smooth implementation, increased resourcing to support them in everything. I'd like to get involved in the process myself, personally. And I think we really need to change some of the dense language of the policy that alienates survivors. I think we really need to change, especially a piece that was really striking to me was jurisdiction. There's no clear definition of jurisdiction for a Ubyssey student, and I think that's unacceptable for a university that students are choosing to call their home. And then there's ambiguity, whether a policy supports them in one area or if it doesn't support them in another area. So those are some specific things I'd really like to work on with that policy, and mostly just ensuring a smooth implementation. I see I'm running out of time, so I'll stop. Thanks.
Thank you, candidate Bangu. Candidate Mehta, do you need a repeat?
Yes, please.
Gotcha. That'll be, what are your plans for continuing the VP AUA's work with SV Pro, the SASC, and other student leaders for improving survivor-centric, trauma-informed initiatives when it comes to sexual violence education and creating a culture of consent when campus campus life? In addition to that, are there certain groups that are a priority? You have 1 minute.
I think this is an excellent question. It really speaks to one of the things that I've been working on this year, and I hope to continue if elected in this role, is a piece about bridging the gap between policy and people. You know, a lot of hard work and energy went into developing the changes to this policy, and you can see that it is very meaningful to the individuals that know about it and are aware of what it means. But there's a whole group of people in our community that are not aware of this policy and the changes that are happening at this super high level. We need to make cultural changes as student leaders, move towards a consent culture, and this means educating one another, talking to the undergraduate societies, and make values of our community are right at the forefront of all the work that we do. The work that we've done so far in this has been the equity and inclusion education modules, which I hope to collaborate with the SASC and SV Pro on to educate AMS staff and executives on disclosure responses, peer support to individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Mehta. All right, so our last question is going to be what about what sets you apart? And so it's going to begin with candidate Mehta, and again, you have 1 minute to respond. You're both experienced in university and student governance. What experience makes you more qualified than your opponent? Candidate Mehta, you have 1 minute.
I'd like to start off this question by acknowledging that Ishana running for an executive race in the middle of a pandemic. This is pretty awesome, and I'm very proud to be here with her today. We've worked together this past year, and so I don't want this to come across as we're pitting one another against each other. Student leadership is about collaboration and compassion, especially now more than ever. And I think the only thing that I'd have to add is that I'm really excited to continue this conversation and approach things collaboratively. With regards to my candidacy, I know that I have a lot of experience at Ubyssey that goes beyond AMS and policy leadership. When I started out at Ubyssey, I was in the collegiate program, and that's how I built my community. And these experiences with undergraduate societies, research clubs, and extracurriculars really give me a broader sense of what the values and concerns of our Ubyssey students. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Mehta. Candidate Bungu, you have 1 minute as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. What Shivani said is absolutely amazing. I really like that both of us are running here and running together. It says a lot about how leadership is at Ubyssey or how it's evolving. Now, what sets me apart from her, I don't know. We're both I think we're both competent people. But I do have one thing that really drives me and has always driven me, and that is that I've been fortunate enough to serve you as your senator at large for this past year. And I never forget why I'm here. And it's because of the students and it's for the students. And I will always remember that. That's the one thing that drives me. And that's what's driven me when I've been the co-chair at caucus that got you your flawed reading break approved. When we extended your withdrawal deadline in terms 1 and 2, when we drafted an advocacy plan called Senate 2023, I led that. And it's so comprehensive, it'll guide the caucus for years to come. I've also learned so much as the vice chair of the budget committee. I think I really have the experiences and the passion that's going to make me a great VP AUA. So thank you for your question. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Candidate Bungu. Yeah, and thank you both for acknowledging that this is something of, I don't know if it's a first, we have to ask Sheldon about that, but it's significant to say the least. Right, so moving on into closing statements. You each have 30 seconds to deliver your closing statements. Candidate Bungu, you have 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, I won't go extensively into my platform. Please check it out at ashana.ca. But what I will say is that you've placed your faith in me, as a result of which I was able to serve you this past year. And I've really, really appreciated that. And I felt honored to do that, to advocate for you. And I really hope you'll place your faith in me again so that we can continue to fight together. And I know you have 2 worthy candidates before you today, and I really hope you vote for me. I would love to be your next VP AUA. I think I'd make a great one. But even if you're not voting for me, do make sure you get out and vote. It's really important. So thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Bungu. Candidate Mehta, 30 seconds.
Good, thank you. So thank you so much for everyone coming out this evening. I'd like to acknowledge that this year has been extremely challenging for everyone in our community, but by electing leaders that are compassionate and experienced in the AMS, we will be able to increase accessibility and promote student well-being at all levels of governance.
For more information about my platform, ideas, and experience, and ways I hope to remove these barriers for student leadership, please visit voteforshivani.ca and find out more. As well, I'm always happy to chat about my work at the AMS and changes that I hope to implement with the community, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Kenneth. Right, so that brings us to the end of the VP-AUA debate, or I want more emojis. Hey, shout out to these two people for dealing with the shifting goalposts that is Zoom debates. So yeah, it's good stuff. I promise that we're going to have more time for questions in the future, and it's apparent that this online format allows for more audience participation. So yeah, hopefully I can work with the elections committee to maybe shift around the times a little bit and allow for a little bit more audience participation. So, yeah.
Can I just ask one question? There's just a lot of people saying that there was one particular question that they wanted to ask us that a lot of people were asking. Are we allowed to respond to that in the chat or no?
Respond to the chat. So actually, we have a couple minutes left until the end of this thing. If we want to do a 1 minute response to that, that'd be great. Is that the question?
I'm not sure exactly what question it is, but there seems to be a lot of people asking that. So yeah, maybe it is the grad student one.
I think it's the grad student one. I saw a lot of arrows point toward that one, so I guess we'll ask that one. Thank you for bringing that forward. Right, so yeah, so the question is, the AMS represents 10,000 graduate students. Which graduate student-specific advocacy priorities will you have, and why should graduate students vote for you? Give 1 minute to candidate Bundle.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, there's a heavy population of undergraduates, but graduate students are very, very important to me as well. So I want to be supporting the to move towards a 100% subsidized PhD, especially, or at least once you become a PhD candidate, because to me, it doesn't make sense that you're paying to work for the university, especially considering a lot of these accolades that Ubyssey likes to flaunt is a result of that research that graduate students are doing. Another very passionate about is the GSI, the Graduate Support Initiative. I'd like for it to be improved in a couple of ways. I won't take too much time. You can reach out to me if you want to know more. But mainly that I'd advocate that the allocation towards this initiative is increased for sure, but also that currently GSI is distributed based on enrollment, which kind of serves as an incentive for a lot of faculties to over-enroll and give the bare minimum to graduate students. So I think we really need to reevaluate that. It's a pretty flawed system. So I think I'm running out of time, but yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you, Candidate Bundu. Candidate Mehta, do you need a review?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. We've got, all right, so the AMS represents 10,000 graduate students, roughly. What grad student specific advocacy priorities will you have, and why should grad students vote for you? You have 1 minute.
So part of being at the AMS is being able to collaborate with other student leadership. This past year, I've worked very closely with Nicholas, who is the GSS Vice President, University and Academic Affairs, and he's done an incredible job of supporting our initiatives at the AMS and really being able to move collective students' priorities forward. One of the projects that I worked on this past year that I really want to improve in the future is the Academic Experience Survey. We are fragmenting the student responses right now by running 2 separate surveys. So the AES has an option where we can actually branch off the questions and gather graduate student specific data. And by having this data-driven form of advocacy, we can supplement all of the information that graduate student society needs in order to be able to effectively advocate to the individuals in charge of making their decisions. And so that's one way I hope that I use my collaborative leadership approach to support our peers at the GSS. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Mehta, and thank you both for dealing with that coming out of the blue. But now we've reached the end of this portion, so feel free to take a break, stretch your legs, do whatever you need to recover after a very good debate. Moving on to the VP Admin debate. So the VP Admin candidates, can you please turn on your cameras and show us who's running? All right, we've got candidates Benson and Lou right there in front of us. Hello. Right, so yeah, do y'all need a repeat of the rules, or yeah, good to go?
Maybe if we could just go over them one more time quickly, please.
No worries. They've changed a lot in the hour since we began. So You will both have 30 seconds to make an opening statement at the beginning and 30 seconds at the end for a closing statement. After the opening statement, you will each receive 2 minutes to address a question, and you'll each get 3 questions. So after those 2 minutes that you've both answered, it'll be an alphabetical and a reverse alphabetical, and so on and so forth. At the end of both of your responses to those questions, you have 3 minutes of open debate where there is no parity of time, and you can either say more about your platform, or you can ask the other a question, or you can pursue the other on a matter. So long as we keep things above the belt, then I'm happy. And no one can monopolize the time, and I'll make sure to jump in if they do. So yeah, that's that. And then at the end, we'll have questions from the audience, hopefully multiple, but it all depends on the time. So does that help?
Yes,
Clear?
thank you.
Beauty. All right. So our first question for our VP admins is. I said that and I lost my place. Right, so candidate Benson, you'll be going first. So COVID-19 guidelines are likely to continue throughout 2021, and there have been continuing non-compliance issues in the nest. How would you protect visitors to the nest and ensure compliance? You have 2 minutes.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm super happy to answer this, but I'm just wondering if we were supposed to give our opening statements first before jumping into the questions. This might be a mistake on my end, but
no, I'm so sorry.
that's okay. No worries.
30 seconds for an opening statement. Good Lord in heaven. Yeah, so 30 seconds.
All right. No worries. Hi, I'm Lauren Benson, and for the past year as your digital media coordinator at the AMS, I've experienced the disconnect between students and the society. Not only was this disheartening, it's evident the organization has lost touch with students and the issues they care about. Whether it's COVID-19 recovery, a new accessibility initiative, campus space, or breaking down barriers between students and executives, my platform will champion student priorities as its foundation stems from the consultation of students, clubs, and constituencies. We need to work together to cultivate a student experience we can all be proud of.
Thank you, candidate Benson. Candidate Liu, you have 30 seconds for an opening statement.
Thank you, Pavan. Hi, everyone. My name is Lawrence. I'm a second-year student hoping to major in psychology, and I'm running to be your next AMS VP admin. So the reason I'm running for AMS VP admin is that I want to work towards creating a direct relationship in how EMS is working to enhance the overall student experience at Ubyssey. So that starts with bringing our services and resources to the students instead of requiring them to come to us. I plan to create a platform where everything will be widely accessible and visible for all students. I'm Lawrence Liu. I'm bringing the AMS to you. Thank you, Vaughn.
Thank you, candidate Liu. All right, now we do the questions. This is where, boy, oh boy, you think I know it. I have it written in front of me. All right, so going reverse alphabetically, candidate Liu, your question is, COVID-19 guidelines are likely to continue throughout 2021, and there have been continuing non-compliance issues in the nest. How would you protect visitors to the nest and ensure compliance? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think the I-7H mandatory mask policy is very important to us at Council and at the AMS. So what I would like to do is I'd like to approach this 2 steps. I like to work with the staff at AMS to better inform employees, volunteers, and contractors that work at AMS to encourage them, or to require them to wear masks, which we already do, but to really set an example of how students should be practicing safety measures in the nest. The second part of that would be to encourage students to follow safety practices. So I do this by adequately informing them of what is required in the nest. Whether it's through AMS channels, more postages in the nest, or a campus-wide informational platform, which I will be hoping to create. I hope and I believe that students will follow the rules here at AMS properly. Thanks, Pawan.
Thank you, candidate Liu. Candidate Benson, do you need a repeat?
No, that's okay. Thank you. All right. Yeah. So I completely want to emphasize the importance of policy I-7A and, just how if we're going to keep the nest open in times of a pandemic, how we need to be prioritizing student safety. And this is something that, we've seen the efforts been made there, but it's something I definitely think we can do better on. And there are a couple ways I'd like to go about this. One thing that I've really noticed personally with my communications background is that we've seen a lot of student voices emphasizing that there are, people not wearing masks, and we're still seeing large groups in the nest, and that we're not seeing these policies followed. So one way I would really like to do that is establish a COVID-19 dashboard on the website that has COVID-19 resources, where we're at with the pandemic, and just the updates that students need, and make sure that they really understand if the nest is going to be open, if you have access to these resources, this is the expectation for the building. And I want to make sure that we're all really on the same page here, because when it comes to COVID-19, this isn't something we can be loose with. This is something that needs, a firm plan of communication, a firm plan of action. And we've seen that with AMS events this year as well, that, we need to set clear expectations across the board. And while there was a COVID-19 overarching plan published by the AMS and a risk assessment, that information is very hard to find. And I found this as well when I was doing my own research, is that, it's not easily accessible. And really, at the end of the day, I think this comes back down to a communications issue as well, is that if we're going to have these expectations of students, we need to make it clear across the board, so we're all ensuring that the nest is a safe place for all.
Thank you, Candidate Benson. Good stuff. All right, moving on to open debate. So we have 3 minutes of open debate where any candidate can say anything, so long as it's generally related to reopening the nest and compliance issues and things like that. So yeah, 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess if I'll just start. So I really like to. I should have more specifically addressed how I would approach this issue. So I would approach this. So one of my biggest platform points is creating a platform that centralizes all the information and available support that's relevant to student social experience. And in the time like this, of course, in the pandemic, that includes information of the AMS and what we expect of students when they're on AMS properties. So through, I think, I'd most likely create this course, create this platform on a Canvas, a widely available, that's widely available to every student on campus. And through these required Canvas courses, modules, I hope to properly address and inform of the community guidelines that we have here at AMS. Regarding mandatory face covering policies and safety measures, of course, in the time of COVID. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. And, I know that COVID-19 courses via Canvas have been something that have been discussed in council and brought up as a potential idea. And I think that's great. However, my concern with that is we need action now. This is not something that we can wait on. We can't wait for the development of said platform. And so while I would really like to see that and would continue to support that if we do find it to be a viable option, I would establish a COVID-19 dashboard on the website pretty much immediately, as soon as I could, so students are on the same page and we all know what to do going forward, so we can streamline our recovery and, kind of get back to the nest we know and love faster and as quickly as we can.
I think the silence is the end of the open debate, unless anyone wants to use the last.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll just get a last word in. Yeah, Lauren, I think that's honestly a great idea. I also like to address. I'd also like to consider addressing and engaging with the student population through AMS channels, social media, or just even more postages around the nest, really hammering that home, telling students, hey, this is what we're required. We're here as a community. This isn't a place for this is a place for everyone on campus. And I really have my faith in students following the.
Good stuff. All right. So moving on to the next question. Right. So we'll be beginning with Candidate Benson here. So the AMS Sustainability Action Plans Indigenous Coordination section hasn't come to council nearly a year after the plan has passed. What do you think the section should include, and how will you work with the Indigenous community to get it done? Candidate Benson, you have.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad this was brought up, because upon my own research of ASAP or that plan, we've seen a lot of research and a lot of dedicated work went into that. And, however, we did see that the consultation of the Indigenous Committee and Indigenous students is, to me, it seems almost as though it's being used as a bit of a buzzword and a keyword and not have significant and fruitful conversations so we can see the changes and listen to their knowledge and expertise on this subject. So something I really plan on doing and have already started getting in the works on with these conversations is consulting with the Indigenous committees and kind of following their guide instead of, having them there as a stakeholder, really valuing their opinions and making sure that this is something that every decision there is consultation along the way. I think this is a big problem we see at the AMS. We get to a point where all these decisions are made and so much research and time goes into these decisions, but we're not seeing student consultation every step of the way from groups that really matter and marginalized voices. I would really like to bring those to the forefront, make sure those are emphasized. And, I think that's the best way for us all to have a more sustainable future at the AMS and actually see the implementation of the goals created by the ASAP plan as well.
Thank you, Candidate Benson. Candidate Liu, you have 2 minutes. Do you need a repeat?
Yeah. Sure. Yes, please.
The AMS Sustainability Action Plan's Indigenous Coordination section hasn't come to Council nearly a year after the plan passed. What do you think the section should include, and how will you work with the Indigenous community to get it done? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Pavan. So I'd just really like to echo what a lot of what Lauren said. Sorry. We need better, more effective, efficient consultation with different the Indigenous student groups on campus. For example, reaching out to the Indigenous committees and having conversation with them in how their traditions and how they what their ideas of what could be implemented into the AMS action plan. I think overall, as an AMS, we need to take a more holistic approach to how we engage with just overall sustainability-related projects in the NEST. So much of that, which falls under the AMS administrative portfolio. I think at the end of the day, we can just, as beautiful they are, I think we can do a lot better than just adding a few more pots of plants in the building. Yeah, thanks.
Candidate Liu, I'm going to press you a little bit more on that. I do want specificity a little bit more on what you think that the plan should include. I'll give you 30 seconds for that.
Thank you, Pavan. Personally, I don't have too much experience working with different Indigenous groups, so I don't know exactly the details of what should be included in what should be added to this action plan. But I think whatever does come to fruition in the future, I think all additions would need proper consultation, just proper conversations and engagement with not just student leaders of the Indigenous student leaders within AMS and also the Indigenous student groups at AMS. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
Right, so that'll bring us to the 3 minutes of open debate on the question of Indigenous consultation for the ASAP plan, but also basically anything else. So you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in there super quickly. And, I think this is definitely something that we really need to talk about, as being a part of the AMS and having experience here. But, we talked about, or you talked about having, not having worked with Indigenous groups before and not having had some of that experience. And, I think I'd really like to emphasize from my own platform and from my own experience that while this does emphasize the Indigenous Committee and Indigenous students' voices, communication skills are really the backbone of everything here. And, that's transferable in all the conversations you have. So that being said, consultating with them, whether you've had lots of experience with that or not, those skills be able to foster a strong relationship and one that's mutually beneficial. And yeah, I just like to really emphasize that, no matter what kind of experience you're coming from, I think it's so important to to be able to be a leader in those conversations and, you know, take your own initiative here, which is something I think we need to see more of in the AMS, as, you know, it's been a long time of following the status quo. And I think to make those big changes that we really need to see for a better future for UBC in all aspects, you know, we have to be able to kind of forge our own path here a little bit.
Awesome. I'll just jump in, Pavan, if that's okay. So on the topic of just sustainability, I really hope to not only consult with different groups, but engage other student leaders on campus, you know, whether it be club execs or constituency execs, and to encouraging their involvement in, you know, different climate action responses here at UBC, you know, whether it be programs or events by different climate action groups. I think it's important to promote and really encourage student leaders on campus to you know, lead by example by attending and partaking in different sustainability and climate change programs on campus.
Absolutely. And I'd like to echo that as well, that I think it's really important to include different voices. And I'd like to explain how I'd like to do that a little bit. So the way I'd like to do this is expand the AMS Sustainability Subcommittee. So if you don't know, the AMS Sustainability Subcommittee is a committee that meets once a month, and it consists of VP Admin, AVP Sustainability, and a few appointed student leaders from different climate change movement clubs on campus. And, you know, I think it's really hard to access that club. And, oh, okay. And I would really like to open that up and make sure we get more student voices there, and, you know, make this something that's accessible to all. And this is something we can get the more voices and perspectives on, the better.
Perfect timing. That brings us to the end of open debate for this first question, second question, rather. So moving on to the third question, candidate Lou, you'll be up first, and you mentioned clubs earlier, so this is a good segue. Our third question is. Many clubs saw decreased engagement this year due to COVID-19. How will you support clubs in the recovery from the pandemic? Candidate Lou, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I've absolutely I address through the through my platform points. So I think what's really important is we're able to maintain these relationships with club executives. And really approaching, I know a recent concern with, you know, the AMS is club deconstitution. You know, the COVID pandemic has made obviously engaging execs and members hard for all execs for all execs of AMS clubs. You know, it's just hard to maintain that sense of community in a virtual setting. So I believe the current policy does state that. With clubs less than 25 active members, that could be a basis for deconstitution. So I really like to approach this, you know, pandemic period. I really like to approach the topic of clubs with a more lenient approach with clubs that have been struggling with engagement issues. You know, working with clubs on a case-to-case basis to address, you know, the different issues instead of just automatic deconstitution. You know, like what went wrong, how can we help? You know, what here are the resources and support that we can offer that can help you. And of course, if they do end up falling short through different AMS channels, if they do end up falling through different AMS channels, such as, you know, a grace period for clubs to get back on their feet. Thanks, Pavan.
Good stuff. Candidate Benson, do you need a repeat?
No, thank you.
minutes.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm super glad this is brought up, because this is really at the core of my platform and something I care about so much. And in these past couple weeks, as I've talked with clubs and consulted with them, the thing I keep hearing is that engagement is down, membership retainment is down. And, you know, this really saddens me, because as a second-year student, I got to experience what it was like to really be immersed in that UBC experience. And that's something I want to bring back. And the way I plan to do that is through establishing a club's recovery benefit to guide all clubs beyond COVID-19. So the way this would work is threefold. This will empower clubs with online resources, and this is open to all clubs, things like webinars on how to use online platforms and things that, can push us through in the sense that student leaders are finding themselves in positions they've never been in before and positions they didn't really sign up to be in. So they shouldn't be stressing about the logistics of things. And I would love to provide them with online resources through the websites, webinars, things like that to guide them through that. Another thing I would like to do, if applicable, of course, is to supply clubs with COVID-19 resources. This is dependent on restrictions, of course, but if we get to a point in my term of VP admin where we could have small in-person events, I would love to really champion COVID-19 safety by providing face masks, hand sanitizer, things like that. And the final way I would like to do that through the club's recovery benefit is amplify the video conferencing grant that was created by Sylvester last year and, make it more applicable to more clubs. I would like to take it from just the video conferencing grant, bring all forms of online communication, whether that be needing a pre like that. That's something I would really like to do and, get clubs beyond COVID-19 and see them through this and, help them grow to be even better.
Thank you, Candidate Benson. We will move on to 3 on the topic of the clubs and engagement. So yeah, you both have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to jump in if that's okay. Lawrence, I completely agree with you in being more lenient with clubs and providing grace periods, things like that. Because obviously, like I did mention before, students are finding themselves in positions that they didn't expect them to be in. None of us could have seen this coming. So I was just kind of wondering on that a little bit. As you mentioned, talking about consulting with clubs on an individual basis, I was wondering what the day-to-day of that would look like and if you have some sort of system in place for that.
Yeah, for sure. I think just keeping it simple. My office is always open. I know a lot of these clubs are, well informed of their, day-to-day club activities. So keeping my channels, keeping my, different channels, keeping my social media channels open for these club execs and coming and allowing them to come in and, speak to me so we can work together to, approach the issues of, low engagement.
Yeah, thank you. I completely agree. On having an open office and increasing engagement. I think that's super, super important. Another thing I'd really like to emphasize is what I've been hearing from clubs is their frustration around slow processing times with refunds and things like that, slow communication, and really just a disconnect between clubs and the AMS. We've seen that, this has been a tough year for all of them, and that I really think that operations from the AMS end of things should be the least of their worries. And that's something I'd really like to emphasize by not only having open communications, but having set plans and a club's recovery benefit that is different than any club existing fund because it fits specifically the needs of each club. And that's something I would emphasize as well, is that each club is unique, each club is different. They all have a different set of challenges, whether that be engagement, membership retention, all those things that I've mentioned before. Each one is unique in its own setting, and working on a case-to-case basis is really important, but having the foundation there is really necessary as well.
All right, I'll take that silence and looking at me as an indication of the end of this open debate. So that was the third question. Yeah, that was the third question. Cool. So now we're going to be moving on to audience questions. And so I believe we have time for more than just 1 or 2. Yeah, we've got time for 4 probably. I'm going to call my shot. So yeah, so we'll continuing on with 1-minute responses for both of you. And so our first question is to campus space. So hot topic. Sorry, who just went first? It was Lou? Oh boy.
So, yes.
Okay, so then candidate Benson, you're next. Right, so this question is, at the beginning of the year, clubs transitioned to the new platform of Campus Space as the central hub of communication of club information and membership. However, many students found that it wasn't very useful, intuitive, and there were a couple of privacy breaches. What will you do to ensure that clubs are getting value out of Campus Space compared to the now defunct Clubhouse platform? Candidate Benson, you have 1 minute to respond.
Definitely. Thank you to whoever brought this up. Yeah, I think this is something that I would really like to talk about because we saw such a huge push at the beginning of the year with Campus Space, and from what I've heard from clubs, they gained some good traction at Imagine Day, and things just went downhill from there. Campus Space in its current state isn't worth it for clubs to be putting their time and effort to when they're seeing more engagement on Facebook, Instagram, and it's really sad to me that an AMS resource and platform that has so much potential is hindering clubs instead of helping them. In my experience as the digital media coordinator, I also ran the AMS page on Campus Space, and I found the same thing, that it's not intuitive and it's hard to access. So I would really like to see a streamlined way of communication for Campus Space by producing webinars and online series so students understand how to use it and increase engagement by promoting the advertising of Campus Space.
Thank you, candidate Benson. Candidate Liu, do you need a repeat?
No, I think I'm okay. Yeah, so I'd really like to address this issue through just through kind of two processes. So first, I'd like to offer more information on how student leaders, or more especially club leaders, also constituency leaders, representatives, can better manage their campus page to broaden to appeal to the wider student population. I think, but what's more important, I think, is increasing the usership to Campus Space. Currently, there are around 10,000 average Campus Space users per month on Campus Space, from Ubyssey to on Campus Space. So I think through my course content, through my potential Canvas project, I hope to really promote Campus Space, inform students of all the different clubs, constituency, external groups, events on campus, but also, instructing them on how to navigate, successfully navigate campus space as a student user.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan.
Moving on. Right, so you both speak a lot about clubs and what they need. Have either of you been a part of or involved in an AMS club? Candidate Liu, you have the floor for 1 minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was part of the Hong Kong Student Association. It's a social campus group. It's a social club on campus, that promotes Hong Kong culture, as well as just random events here and there. So I think through that experience, I was really able to just learn hands-on experience, as well as I'd say I think problems and hurdles that comes with reaching out to students and planning these events. And I really believe these experiences will allow me to these experiences has really given me what's it like as a club exec, and I think it'll really help me in my role as a VPN. Thanks so long.
Thank you, candidate Liu. Candidate Benson, do you need a repeat?
No, thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you. So yeah, I am a part of an AMS club as well. I am a part of a sorority where I hold an executive position, and really shown me what it's like to be a club exec firsthand, and has helped me understand the struggles that students in positions like mine are going through right now. Having a club exec, being a club exec requires a lot of coordination, organization, time management, and really just communication with your group members as well as outside organizations. And that experience has been extremely beneficial to me, and something that I've really appreciated in my past 2 years at Ubyssey. As well, I'd like to emphasize that in my role as digital media coordinator, I worked with a lot of club executives to coordinate their campaigns, help them promote them, and along with that, I've heard the struggles that they've experienced as well. And they've really emphasized to me what they would like to see in the next coming year. So.
Thank you, candidate Benson. We've got plenty more time for audience questions. So this next one is going to be about the Hatch. And I'll be beginning with candidate Benson. So the Hatch Art Gallery is a significant part of the VP administration portfolio. However, you have no priority points toward improving the gallery. Can you address what your goals are with Hatch if you are elected? Candidate Benson, you have 1 minute.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm glad that came up. I do actually have some goals on Hatch Art Gallery, and this is something that is really important to me. One thing I would really like to see is incorporating Hatch art into student curriculum. Because I think what's happening right now is we're the only student union that has an art collection, and I think that's really cool and really overlooked. Not a lot of people know about it, and not a lot of people know how to access it. I know as an art student how relevant this could be in many courses as you look at the broader implications of art and the sociological meaning behind it. So this is something I would really like to include, and I'd like to work with faculty members and as well as other students to find ways that this is both relevant and informative. Another thing I'd really like the traffic to the Hatch Art Gallery. There's a couple ways I'd like to do this. The main one being providing enhanced support through the AMS. This comes down to the Hatch's own advertising, advertising through AMS platforms, and really just generating awareness and making sure that students know what's available to them and championing their artwork as well.
Candidate Lou, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, emphasizing a lot of what Lauren said. You know, the AMS art collection, 70 pieces of art, worth up to almost $4 million, and it's just stored away in the nest. You know, most students are not really knowledgeable on what's in the collection, or really the whole collection in itself. People don't know that technically they own those pieces of art. It's just presence is largely unknown. So what I really hope to do is what I hope to do is develop a strategic plan for this art collection through consultation with students, art professionals, and even art-related organizations on campus to really future for this collection instead of just collecting dust in the basement of the nest. I'd also like to increase just the visibility of this art collection. Last year before the pandemic, there was an exhibition planned. Unfortunately, it was canceled with plans to display the entire art collection. But what I plan is securing digital rights for the showcase of the Hatch Art Gallery, and also increasing events and showings of the art collection.
Thank you, Candidate. Thank you, Candidate. Cool.
Thanks.
All right, we've got chance popping off. Okay, so, right, let's talk about sustainability again for a little bit. Right, so this will be beginning with Candidate Lou, and yeah, I think after this we'll have time for one more question after this last one. So yeah, let's yeah, so this one is about sustainability. So Candidate Lou, can you identify some of the barriers around the approachability of initiatives brought forward by AMS Sustainability and how you plan to make sustainability a priority at the AMS? This year, AMS Sustainability had a large conflict with the digital media team trying to send promotions through to the AMS social media pages. How do you plan on addressing these issues and issues of communication in the future? You have 1 minute.
Muted. Yeah, absolutely. I plan on engaging with different, personally speaking, out to different climate action and sustainability organizations on campus. Groups like the Climate Justice Ubyssey, who I spoke to a couple days ago. They're always having initiatives and projects that require funds, and we as an AMS, we have the Ams Sustainability Initiative Fund, which is not that well being which is not that utilized by as much as we like. So working with these clubs, engaging on, hey, like what projects do you have that we can support you on, and hopefully we can approach the issue of sustainability with a more holistic approach from the AMS VPN in office. Thanks, Bowen.
Thank you, Candidate Lou. Candidate Benson, do you need a repeat?
No, thank you.
Good stuff. You have a minute.
All right. Yeah, I really appreciate that this came up, as this is something I can speak to quite directly in my time in the communications team. Yeah, I worked quite closely with the sustainability team, and one thing that I really experienced in my role is just the emphasis that the communication is broken at the AMS. As much as I want to champion each initiative and event, we need, like Lauren said, a holistic approach, but holistic by having the whole communications team on board and on the same page, and having a streamlined mode of communication so that events and initiatives and campaigns come out, and we know how much work went into them, how many months went into planning these, that they can actually be properly appreciated, and like the other candidate mentioned, propagating the SPF Sustainability Projects Fund and making sure that research and those efforts don't go unnoticed.
Thank you, Candidate Benson. I know we're coming up on time, but this last one is really important. So, right, this is going to be a little bit about money. So, candidate Benson, you get the first response. The VP admin portfolio is one of only 2 executive portfolios that has significantly increased its budget at the same time that the AMS is over $600,000 in deficit. How will you ensure that your initiatives are financially responsible, and how might you eliminate bloat in the VP admin department? Candidate Benson, you got 1 minute.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is really important, especially in a year like this year where when talking to clubs, I've heard about how so many are going into recessions and dealing with debts just like the AMS is as well. I think there are a couple ways we can go about this, and that's, really going into depth and making sure that every expenditure is one that's worthwhile. As we're approaching the sustainability $26,000 project that is coming up, while I support that, I need to know that this is going to be worthwhile and communicate with the VP Finance on every approach, every step of the way, to make sure that this is something viable and sustainable for the AMS, and that every investment is going to be worth its while. And I would really like to see that in all areas of the nest, not just sustainability.
Thank you, candidate Benson. Candidate Liu, do you need a repeat?
I'm okay, thanks. So regarding the new, I just want to note regarding the new sustainability portal project, it's actually $28,000 that are currently pending council approval. So going back on the question, so I really like to approaching the issue of money. Running a huge deficit. It's been hard for everyone financially here at Ubyssey. AMS, we're running at a deficit. So really, with approaching different projects and initiatives, I think we have to make the best use of all the money that's allocated in our budget, that's allocated to us as a VP admin portfolio. For example, something that that I noticed in my research was there was a $2,000 conference grant that could be reimbursed to the VP admin for for travel to conferences that on behalf of the AMS. We're probably not going to be traveling for the next year, half a year. So
Candidate Liu, I'm going to give you. I muted myself again. I'm going to give you another 20 seconds to specifically say how you're going to make sure that the commitments that your portfolio, should you be elected, are financially responsible and not just name things that might be financially responsible. 20 seconds.
Awesome. Yeah, really just holding every project and initiative that we establish, accountable. Working with VP Finance and of course the Finance Committee at the EMS to see, hey, if this money allocated that of a part of a budget is going to be worth it at the end of the day. So really, holding different people and positions in my office accountable for what they're spending their money towards. Thanks, Pawan.
Thank you, candidate Liu. And now, thank you all, audience, for staying with me for just a couple minutes afterwards. Now we're moving on to closing statements, and then we'll do like a little prize draw, I think. Yeah, so candidate Liu, you have 30 seconds to say your goodbyes.
Yeah, thanks, Pawan. So, for the upcoming year, the VP Admin Office will really have a major influence on how your student experience is going to shape out. That's really important to have someone in the office who has a relevant experience and tangible plans to accomplish the goals that are set out. I intend to do just that. My platform introduces actionable items that will make lasting impact on student social experience here at Ubyssey. Let's work together to build that campus community that we once had. Thanks, Pawan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, candidate Liu. Candidate Benson, you have 30 seconds to say see you later.
Yeah, first and foremost, everyone's involvement here does not go unnoticed. Thank you all for taking the time to tune in and provide me with an opportunity to engage with the student body. If there's anything you take away from today, I hope it's that bridging the gap between you and your AMS represent the core of my experience, my platform, and the work I'll do for you. In a time of so much uncertainty, a lack of communication cannot be a cause for student stress. To learn more about my platform, visit votelauren.ca. Last year's voter turnout crashed to an 11.6%. We can do better, and we need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Benson. And that brings us, I keep muting myself. That brings me to the end of the VP admin debate. And now I'll pass it on over to the elections team to do, I think they're giving away some prizes or something, right? Nice, cool.
Yes.
Yes, we are. So, all the better to listen to AMS debates. We're giving out some Echo Dots. They're fun. And some gift cards as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Mona, who is our events officer in the elections committee. And she's going to use the spinning wheel of fortune, I suppose, to select our winners. What are we giving away right now?
Right now, we're giving away 1 EcoDot and 2 gift cards worth $25 each.
Okay. And then at the end of the debate, we'll do the last 2 Echo Dots and 2 more gift cards. So stay tuned. Can't run away yet. So take it away, Lana.
Okay, let me just share my screen for this very exciting draw view thing. Right, can you all see this? Okay, perfect. So just like a couple notes, all the candidates are excluded from this draw, and so is the elections team. And no personal data is stored on this website. Okay, so let's begin our first draw for one of the gift cards. Just shoot me a message with your email. That'd be amazing. Okay, so now a draw for the second gift card.
Is it moving on your screen? Because it's not moving on my screen.
Right, what was that?
It looks like it's frozen on viewer screens, perhaps.
Oh, okay, wait. Well, okay, let me pause this and redo it, I guess.
Who won the first one?
It was Zoya. Sorry if I'm butchering your name.
Zaya Singh? Zoya?
Yeah, I'm winning the first one. If you can hear me.
On our screen, it says Yang.
Yeah, Yang Zhuja. It's me.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's our first winner.
Okay, well, Isabel, if you can announce the ones that people who win, because it's different on my screen. That's
okay. Yeah, just.
Okay.
We're not just choosing people. So you can stop sharing. And then just tell us who. Okay, second. So Zucha Yang won the first one. And then the second gift card.
Should I share my screen again? Will that work?
You can try.
Okay, let's go. So, okay, this is for the second. Can you all see it?
It's still loading for me.
I'm sorry, I don't think my Wi-Fi is the best.
Yeah, I can't see it, unfortunately. Okay. Yes.
Just trust me that I will spin it and I'll announce you later.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Okay, so
I can't hear you. Mona?
yeah,
Sorry, what did you say? Your audio cut out.
I think Keith Hester won the second gift card.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
I'll send you all a screenshot.
I believe that's the director of the AMS. But I guess we don't have any rule that Keith can't win a gift card. So, and then for the Echo Dot. Okay, could you spell the name into the
Claire. CLAIREEWING.
Okay. Okay. So okay. So if Claire and Zuja already sent me your email, so that's great. Keith, I will reach out and get you your gift card. And yeah, okay. So how long is our break now?
So now should have a break, a 10-minute break, and come back at 7 for the last debate of the day.
See you all in 10 minutes. Be prepared for a riveting Board of Governors 5-candidate debate. See y'all then. Bye. think that's the end of our very calm, very quiet 10-minute break. I hope you all had some time for some meditation or otherwise. So yeah, we'll get things started. The candidates to turn their cameras on. Got 3 faces looking at me right now. Got 4. Oh yeah. And do I see 5? Show me number 5. There's number 5. Very good. Very cool. Right. So just as a little reminder of how things are going to be going. So we'll start out with opening statements. I promise I won't forget this time. Everyone will get 30 seconds to say their platform in alphabetical order. And then we'll have the questions in which we'll alternate going back and forth alphabetically. And each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. And then after we go down the line, we will have 3 minutes of open debate. Please be respectful. In these more crowded debates, make sure that everyone's getting time and that you're not monopolizing anything. It's a great word. I've used it 10 times today. And so yeah, that'll be for each question, and yeah, each question will be themed on a particular thing the question was about. Anyway, I'm over explaining things. And then at the end, we'll have audience questions and closing statements from all of you. So are we ready to go? Candidate, are you good? Okay.
Hi, I'm just plugging in my laptop. It's about to die.
Oh, no worries. That's all good. Yeah. We'll give you a second to get that going. Actually, you're at the end, so we can start off with opening statements. So the first person to open this up is going to be, what's the alphabet? Candidate Agostimoro. So Candidate Agostimoro, do you want to give us your 30-second opening statement?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. My name is Dante, and I'm running to be one of your student board of governor representatives for 2021-2022. Been very active in both student advocacy and academic governance during my 2.5 years at Ubyssey, including 2 terms on the Vancouver Senate, co-chair of the Vancouver Student Senate Caucus, and time on both AMS Council and the board of directors of the CUS. I'm looking to bring my platform includes increased financial support for students, continued action on the climate crisis, and furthering Ubyssey's commitment to EDI and anti-racist initiatives. Looking forward to the debate and hearing more from the candidates.
Good stuff. Thank you, candidate Agostimoro. Candidate Alamzadeh, is it? Alamzadeh?
Alamzadeh, yes.
Thank you. You have 30 seconds.
Arzu Alamzadeh Mehrizi. I'm running for a board of governors. I am 50-year PhD student, and I have been a student advocate since the first months of starting my PhD by being involved in GSS, being the GSS VP student, counselor, being involved in a variety of GSS committees. Also, I have been chair of HR committee at GSS. In the past year, I have been senator for Faculty of Graduate Studies, and also I have been the vice chair of awards and
That'll be the end. That'll be the end.
Okay, vice chair of awards and teaching and learning.
Thank you, candidate. Thank you, candidate. Thank you, candidate. All right, moving on to candidate Korniashik.
Yeah, Korniashik. Thank you.
You have 30 seconds, Korniashik. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for being here today. The reason I am running for Board of Governors this year is my desire to move Ubyssey to a new level of heights, placing it in the first place among Canadian universities. I will achieve that through strengthening and improving Indigenous people inclusion and awareness, tuition cost cutting, safe return to in-class education and on-campus social life, and increased commercialization. The University of British Columbia is a great university, but there's always room to grow. That is why my campaign slogan rolls around the word excellence, constructing excellence together.
Thank you, candidate. I can't believe I already messed up the alphabet. Candidate Holmes, you, in fact, H does come before K. You have 30 seconds for your opening statement.
Thanks so much. My name is Max Holmes. I'm a 5th-year art student. I'm running for re-election as your student governor. Over the past 4 years, I've served students as a AMS VP academic. I've successfully advocated for our first fall reading break, an extension to the course withdrawal deadline, an endorsement of the Inclusion Action Plan, funding for graduate tuition awards, and voted against unjustified tuition increases. You can learn more about my platform, which includes anti-racism initiatives, a student affordability plan, truth and reconciliation, climate justice in action, housing, childcare, and SkyTrain at voteholmes.ca.
Thank you, candidate Holmes. And rounding it out with candidate Yi, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Georgie Yee. I go by she, hers pronouns, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here to talk about my platform for the student rep on the Board of Governors. Having served as your VP Academic and University Affairs this past year, and as a residence life advocate, I've been able to triage a variety of issues in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, in the midst of a pre-existing affordability and mental health crisis. Students need accountability and justice, not empty promises. This next year, I want to tackle issues of affordability, equity, and decolonization.
Thank you,
and I'm
Kennedy.
super excited to
Thank you,
talk
Kennedy.
all about
Thank you,
it.
Kennedy. I will thank you progressively louder until people listen to me. All right, moving on to let's get things started with Candidate Yi. The first question, and this is going to be a long line, so feel free to let me know if you need to repeat the question anywhere down the line. So, Candidate Yi, you have 2 minutes to respond to. Last summer, former board chair Michael Kornberg resigned after it was found that he liked tweets disparaging the Black Lives Matter movement. Would you call out racism publicly on the board if elected? You have 2 minutes. You're muted.
Isn't that the quote of the year? I think we have a commitment to address racism in our community. Racism exists on a spectrum, and it isn't black or white, it isn't binary. We need to be able to call out racism and take a stand against it. I think one of the biggest things that has come out of this past year is the reckoning around racial injustice, and this affects all levels of our community, whether it's students, staff, leadership. And one of the biggest things, especially regarding having racism within our leadership, is that it affects all parts of the organization, and we cannot stand for racism in the community. However, I want it to be noted that going back to how we address racism as a non-binary concept, I think it's really key to address all the levels of racism and being how we're complicit in the system. So it's really vital to be able to call out both explicit actions of racism as well as how we create systems of racism at Ubyssey. And that starts with giving leadership positions to historically marginalized individuals as well, and being able to take a strong stance on racism in our community and all the intersections that it connects with.
Indeed. Moving on to Candidate Koniashin. You have 30 seconds. Sorry, you have 2 minutes.
Definitely. Thank you so much. So it's definitely one of the most controversial topics of the year. And as a kind of direct and quick question, I would address directly the issue of racism on campus to the Board of Governors. I would like to greatly agree with Georgia that this topic cannot be just empty talk through. It has to be risen, and it has to involve not just some binary characteristics, but a more something that I would focus on with my platform is focusing on racial inequalities, especially on the social media platforms. We are moving and we're working in the web-oriented time, and a lot of racial comments and a lot of racial inequalities happen on the medium of websites and social media platforms. So that's something that I would like to greatly focus with my platform and fight for in the Board of Governors. As well, one of the biggest pillars of my platform is ensuring the inclusion and equality for Indigenous people, and especially Asian students, considering the recent events and some controversies. I will talk more about the Indigenous Peoples Plan. However, that I think should be one of the biggest focuses of the Board of Governors and my candidates. Thank you very much, and yeah, to give my time to Paul.
Thank you, Candidate Koniashin. You've answered the question well, but I just I want an on the record like kind of yes or no about it. You did go like kind of around it, so yes or no, would you call out racism on the board in like 15 seconds?
Yes, as I think I mentioned that at the very beginning of the question, the direct answer is yes.
Thank you, candidate Korniashek. Moving on to candidate Holmes. You have 2 minutes to answer the question. Do you need a repeat?
No, I've got the question. Thanks so much. So I think to start off, I have to recognize that I'm one of the people running for re-election. I was on the board at the time. And I think one of the things we have to recognize is how pervasive white supremacy is within institutions. Just speaking of these tweets, for example, it was well known by Ubyssey writers about these likes. It was well known by AMS execs. It was well known across the university that this is something that this person was liking, and people didn't speak out enough. I didn't speak out enough. I recognize that. It's why I have made my platform as justice-oriented as it is, and I've tried to dedicate as much of my time on the board to making sure that these initiatives are funded. And so I think getting specifically into what more we can do is we can actually listen to Black, Indigenous, people of color on campus who have specifically told us what we need. We need to hire more Black, Indigenous faculty at Ubyssey. That's why I've supported the motion that came out of the Senate to hire at least 10 to 15 new Black professors. It's why, as I've sat on the academic renewal working group, I'm pushing as much as possible. We need much greater commitments for how many Black and Indigenous professors we hope to hire, but we also need resources to support them. It's why I supported the board getting more anti-racism training this year than I think we've probably got decade as a board. I think it's important that we need to have people to have this training to speak out. And I think that you've seen even within the Senate when we've had some issues with people saying some things that aren't quite right. I have spoken out as an individual senator against those comments, and I have pushed back hard against them, and I'm trying to get a code of conduct there. But this also needs to be happening at the board level too. I think that there's so much more that we need to be doing to just fund all of these different initiatives, especially the recommendations that are going to be coming out of the Ubyssey Task Force on Anti-Racism and Inclusive Excellence. And I'll continue to stay dedicated to making sure things like the Inclusion Action Plan are endorsed, and we continue to fund these initiatives, and we continue to listen to the community on their asks, because this is the most important thing Ubyssey needs to do next year.
Thank you, Candidate Holmes. Candidate Alamzadeh, do you have a question?
Question. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I would first quickly say yes, I will do call out, and I have been raising my voice and concern constantly in different settings, either at the student organization, at the Senate level, at the Senate committee level. I have constantly raised my concern when I realize that there are a lot of racist comments coming up, and or racist comments have been raised during the discussion. I have been dealing with a lot, and I also during the last Senate there was a motion, as Max mentioned, that it was supporting the hiring of as well as Black students, and I also explained to the Senate that what I have observed during the professor during the hiring of the professor, that I explained to the Senate of my past 5 years of experience of what I've very strong white supremacy, and I call this exactly, I use this word, that existed within the UNC when it comes to scholarship, when it comes to hiring the people. And I also urge that right now our resolution is that we make sure to make spots for marginalized people. And I bring the point that they have to think about that. Look at the history, and not having the enough representation right now at the UBC with people who share the history is not that popular. Yes, I raised my voice many times, and if I was there, I would call out for sure. And as being the vice chair of the Congress, I'm constantly, unfortunately, during the committee, I see that there is some sort of white supremacy.
Sorry, you still have 15 seconds left when I raise my hand.
So I engage the people in the discussion when there are disagreements with the words that goes to Black students or Indigenous students. I've constantly encouraged people to change their minds and their kind of white supremacy way of thinking.
Thank you, Candidate Alamzadeh. And rounding it out, Candidate Agosti Moro, would you like to repeat the question, or?
No, that's fine.
Good stuff. 2 minutes.
Perfect, thanks. I'll say right off the bat that I will 100% unequivocally call out any instances of racism that I may witness on the board. Not only explicit instances, but also cases of unconscious bias and the furthering of discriminatory practices that have become commonplace in this university. Max mentioned it. It's about giving voices to those who have been marginalized and listening to what they're saying. There's no shortage of Black, Indigenous people of color in this university who have lived experiences with racism and discrimination, and they are telling us what they need. And we have a duty as members of the Ubyssey community, but especially as candidates for the board and future members of the board, to listen to them and work with them to provide things that they say that they need. One main important part of this would be the support of the Indigenous Strategic Plan and the Inclusion Action Plan, providing support and the resources needed to turn the goals and recommendations found there into action. That's why I put it in so strong on my platform that we must support the hiring of BIPOC academics and the increase of student awards for BIPOC people, which is in line with Goal 6 of the ISP and Goal 1 of the IAP. The Senate's motion to recommend to the board is a start, but it must be expanded to address all, also those who are Indigenous and other persons of color, and those who are also domestic students as well. I said it before, we have a responsibility to do this. I will stand firm in making sure that the university lives up to its commitments and that the board lives up to its endorsements as well. And I think I've shown that as well during my time on the Senate, trying, especially within the committee process, where there are instances of questionable comments and viewpoints that should not be commonplace here, pushing back on that. And I realize that with the position I'm in, speaking as a white male, and of course, I will never understand what it's like to be marginalized or discriminated against because of my race, and I'm committed to listening to those who have been, to try and work with them to implement what they feel is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Agosti Moro. So we're going to move into open debate now. Just as a reminder, this is 3 minutes of anyone can say anything. Well, not anything. Keep it classy. But yeah, you can question each other and further any points that you've made, or ask other ask other people about questions. So 3 minutes starting now. Go ahead.
I feel like one topic that we've kind of missed here while talking about anti-racism initiatives is the inadvertent ways that we don't support students of diverse backgrounds at Ubyssey. And I guess what I would be talking about there is I think that we need to be looking at the board expanding the amount of scholarships that we have available to international students, especially BIPOC international students. And also what we need to be doing is we need to be better funding our graduate students, especially international graduate students, because we don't realize often in Canada and in our universities that a lot of our diversity actually comes from outside of Canada, and we don't do enough to support these people. And so I think that's one thing we also need to be looking at is the inadvertent ways that we make it so much harder for a person of color to go to this university. And that's also some of the things that we need to be looking at the board when we have decision level making over funding, for example.
And just to add on Max's point, we're also kind of overlooking, and I was hoping that this question and this topic is going to come up in the next questions, but the topic of Indigenous people. It seems like we have 5 times more international students at our university than we have Indigenous students. And I believe that the fight with white supremacy and racism should come there, from making sure that Indigenous people are represented as much as possible within our university student body.
Yeah, I'm very much agreed in being able to look at the specific populations that and barriers that present themselves for people of color to attend these institutions and also take up leadership roles in this institution as well. I'm glad that we all agree that that we want to call out racism, that we should call out racism, but we need to be able to put that action into place. We need to also recognize our own complacency in white supremacist systems as well. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask the rest of you is, how will you recognize your own positionality as Board of Governors representatives, and how you'll champion that as largely white males and then another woman of color as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think I did address that in my first response to the question. Is that it's tough for me to understand what that's like. Sure, I may be able to have empathy and draw on some minor, very minor experiences, but to listen is important, and to understand, what I can only imagine is immense pain. And I understand we're coming to the end here, but I want to say that's something that I am committed to: is open dialogue, open listening, and being accessible to students who want to bring those concerns to their Board of Governors representatives.
I'll give you 15 extra seconds to.
Yeah, just gonna quickly also.
Sorry, that was Talamzadeh. We reached the end of time, but Talamzadeh didn't have a chance to speak. Given the online nature of this, I want to give her 15 seconds. So go ahead.
About my platform, but my platform is also hardly advocating for scholarships as well as awards for international students, which Ubyssey is not doing much, especially when it comes to graduate students. And so also I would like to say that we discussed.
Thank you, Canada. Unfortunately, we reached the end of the overtime as well, but no worries. There will be plenty of time for more open debate coming after these next questions. So, moving on. This will be going in alphabetical order now, starting with Canada Augusti Moro. So, this next question is: COVID-19 has laid bare the need for online engagement. How would you improve student engagement at the Board of Governors if elected? Canada Augusti Moro, you have 2 minutes.
I think that's a great question. And one thing that I've always strived to do as an elected representative, whether it be during my time in the CUS, the AMS, or on the Senate, is being to students. When I was in the as a Commerce Student Senator, I created a website where students are able to reach out to me directly, learn more about the role, understand what I can do to help them, and give them the options to how I can help them, and hear their feedback as to what they want to see, whether it be from on the Senate, university-wide, or within my faculty. I'm active on Reddit as well, answering questions and concerns from students, both things in my that I deal with in my current roles, but also other areas of the university that I have gained knowledge and experience in. And that's something that I want to bring to the board as well, is create something that's currently lacking, which is a clear area and space where students can get the contact information of their Board of Governors reps, so that they can bring their concerns and bring their questions directly to them, not having to email different people, because I know I get emails all the time as co-chair of the Student Senate Caucus about board issues that needs to be directed to the Board of Governors and to the Student Board of Governors reps. So an area there that not only provides the info about what is actually the purview of the board, but how to get in touch with the Board of Governors reps. And I also as well want to, and something that the current Board of Governors reps have done, op-eds and occasional, releases explaining what the board is currently up to, the things that have come before it, why the Student Board of Governors reps are voting voting the way they are, soliciting feedback on specific motions and issues from the board. If you give the students the opportunity to speak and to give feedback, they will do it. It's in our blood, and to make that as easy and as streamlined a process as possible is something that I am definitely committed to and have shown a passion for, and I believe I'll be an effective advocate for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada Augusti Moro. Canada Talamzadeh, do you need a repeat?
Disconnection. Sorry.
Sorry, it seems that when, like in the first couple of seconds of when you're speaking, your mic doesn't necessarily pick things up. I don't know if that's something you can fix on your end, but yeah. Do you need to repeat up the question?
You can repeat that, yes, because I had some cut up. Thank you.
No worries, happy to. COVID-19 has laid bare the need for online engagement. How would you improve student engagement at the Board of Governors if elected? You have 2 minutes.
What Dante was saying, that it's important that we make ourselves accessible to the student and put our contact there, that they can contact with us and we can convey the voice with them. So it's so I would say that mainly to also being involved in online events or that is held by different organizations, because and then talk with the people. This is what I have done in the past when I was VP at the GSS. I attended lots of events and I talked in person with the student, and then I brought back the voices to the GSS and as well as the Ubyssey executives. So I guess that being involved in the events and as well as make yourself accessible to by giving an email or any other platform, And if a student wanted to have a chat or Zoom chat, also that's another option. Also, another thing could be being available as social media, where is that like say I can be there in Reddit every Saturday from 5 to 8 p.m. and chat with a student and also engage with them and hear about them and then convey their voice to the board. And also, as well as always, it's always is to be aware of the surveys that are run by a student organization, and also again, voice of the student and convey to the board of governors. That would be another platform, as well as talking with a student like SSE, who also are having the voice of a student, being in contact with them and collect the voice of a student that they have and convey to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Ams Sustainability, right on time. Moving on to candidate Holmes now, because H comes before K. Do you need a repeat?
No, I'm good. Thanks so much. Anybody who knows me is I'm quite active on social media sometimes. That's why, for example, during board meetings, I try to live tweet. I also follow things that are happening on Reddit. For example, when there were issues happening with the athletics and recreation fee, I went on there. I made sure that the student governor opinion was there. I do take issue with the fact that our communication isn't available. It's actually right on the AMS website. That's why the co-chairs often get some of our emails, is sometimes people confuse thinking, oh, I should be emailing the Board of Governors and the senators there. So it is on a public website for everybody to see our communication. But one thing I would say that I think differentiates me from all the candidates here, maybe not Arzu, is I'm only running for the board. And the reason I'm only running for the board is, as somebody who served on the board for the past year, my work has doubled, as with many different areas, and recognizing the capacities that we have. I have benefited from the past 2 years. Jeannie Malone has been the student governor I've served with, and she has helped me so much with the communications we've done with students, and I've learned so much from her and answering to people's specific emails. But one of the things that I would bring as one of the unique candidates here is I've been on the board for 2 years, and I'm prepared for this to be the one thing that I am working on at Ubyssey. I'm prepared to focus on the communications, make sure that we're responding to students when they send us emails. Also over the past 2 years, but also in my time as VP Academic, I've built really strong relationships with both the Graduate Student Society as well as the Alma Mater Society, because ultimately I think one thing that we have to recognize is this is a volunteer position, and we do have paid advocates on campus that are supposed to be bringing forward students. And so one of the other things that I would be doing is making sure that we continue to grow that relationship with the AMS and the GSS and attending those council meetings, giving regular updates to people, but also always being available on social media, as I try to do every single year I've been on the board.
Thank you, candidate Holmes. Moving on to candidate Korniashik. Do you need a repeat?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, awesome. So definitely. So communication is key, as Lauren said before, Lauren Benton, as well as the other candidates here. Communication is key, and throughout my Ubyssey career and my Ubyssey experience, I have found that a lot of students having a position within the AMS or any other one, even with the paid ones, many don't understand or don't get themselves as involved in their position as they could, and that's obviously because of one of the main important things about being a student is that we have other things to do, like education, social life, and whatnot. So that I would be, I want to ensure you, as Max did, that I take this position very seriously. It's a job. I understand it's not a paying job, but it's a job that requires my skills and my time and my efforts. Therefore, I believe that communication is key, and I would also be always available on social medias and emails. But just going into my platform and whatnot. So one of the first things that I would like to do if I'm elected is establishing a social media platform for Board of Governors or the Senate, depending what I'm elected for, so that it can go for many years afterwards, updating students on what is going on in the Board of Governors and in the Senate. Of course, there will be 2 different social media platforms, but explaining every ongoing process, every ongoing decision, and every decision made, as well as having surveys and feedbacks available. available. So that's, again, going back, communication is one of the biggest issues UBC students are facing, and that also reflects in the negative connotation to tuition costs. From what I've seen, heard, yeah, that's my time. I will elaborate more in a second.
Thank you, Kendra Korniashik. A bit unusually, I think I'm gonna fact check for a race that this isn't. I believe the Student Senate Caucus already has its own Twitter. I think. Yeah, it has. I think it has its own social medias already. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kendra Korniashik. And Candidate Yi, you want to round us out?
For sure. So what I've heard resoundingly from students is that throughout the pandemic, the online format has actually made things a lot more accessible, whether it's attending lectures and watching them later, which is why I'm also calling for more lecture recording infrastructure, or because of the less need to commute to campus. On top of my Reddit consultations and responses on Reddit that I've been working on as well, I also live tweet on various board topics and retweet the Ubyssey reporting as well and talk about that as well. I would also want to continue the op-eds such as the pre-board explainers, as well as the explanations I am voting certain ways. For example, the explainer and on this is why we are voting on the against the tuition increases. As a wise student on Reddit said, it's really important that we're hearing right from the horse's mouth. I've been doing consultation with students over WeChat as well, considering that there's whole communities of international students that we don't engage nearly enough with because of bans in on social media in China. We need to be also doing active outreach, and I believe that I can also bring that active outreach to the communities that we don't engage enough with as well. To also look at it from a disability lens, we can also ensure that the board should add closed captioning so that it is accessible for students to read and be able to hear exactly what governors are saying and what administration is saying when they are presenting as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Yi. Just as a small technical note, if you can like stand a little bit closer to your mic, everything you said is audible, but just like a little quiet. Thank you. Right, so now we'll move on to open debate on the question of communication and bog communication and what you would do to improve it. So anyone has the floor.
Yeah, I think something we're also overlooking here, that's something that's come up as I've been, reaching out to constituencies during the election process, is getting feedback directly from them. The Board of Governors reps are active on AMS Council. They do have non-voting seats on there, and they can get student feedback there. But the constituencies really understand the specific issues that face different subsets of students. Something that is facing that challenges an engineering student is facing, or facing the engineering faculty, is going to be a lot different from someone from what the Vancouver School of Economics students are facing as well. So something I'd definitely be interested in is having more face-to-face contact with constituency representatives, whether it's going to their council meetings every once in a while and hearing their feedback, or meeting with their presidents or their vice presidents, academics. I think it's very important. I have, constituency experience. I know what it's like to try and ask questions or get information to people who are in certain areas of power, and it's something I would definitely want to look into more.
Yeah, so I would just like to add on to what I've been talking about before. So I was just one checking. I'm not a fact checker or anything, but just looking at the Twitter. There is a Ubyssey Senate Twitter, but there isn't one with for the Board of Governors. And even this one, it needs to be popularized by the students. It needs to be used. It needs to be there, not just to be there, but to be used usefully. But the second thing, talking about communication, from what I've heard from students doing my research, a lot of people have negative feelings towards tuition increases, mostly because they don't know what those tuitions go for. I know that there's the email and the surveys and the feedback and whatnot, but many students still feel that they do not know where that money goes to. So that, again, going back to the communication issue and topic.
I think one of the things that often when we also talk about being able to engage with constituencies, with AMS Council and GSS and the SUO, I think what we also need to be looking at is who are we not engaging with? The people who are not filling out the surveys, the advocacy surveys, the people who are not reading the Ubyssey about what's going on. How do we engage with those people? And how do we also be able to connect with them on topics that they care about and be able to address the core issues that are at hand? I believe that when we're also talking about making things more accessible, we should never be putting the burden of not engaging on students. We need to be doing that active outreach and not blaming students for apathy either. So that's where I think it's really vital to be able to engage with these other platforms such as WeChat or creating closed captions or other platforms such as WhatsApp or other platforms such as Discord and centralizing them so that they have a platform to go to as to who are my student blog reps.
Build on what Dante said, or actually second what he said, because I myself experienced that when I was GSS VP. I was in the charge of.
I'm so sorry. I have to cut you off again. It's I saw you raise your hand, but it is kind of a 3 minutes for anybody to say anything. So yeah, I really apologize, but we do have to move on.
Should we just jump in if candidates are monopolizing the time? Yeah, I'm still here, but those three took a minute each. I've got a timer here. It's kind of hard for us to say anything in this open format.
Right. In the first debate, you took a minute to say.
I know exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is if we can give more equal time to everyone. This is what's wrong with this format. But yeah.
I certainly agree. So then maybe in this next one we can start with the folks who haven't spoken as much. So yeah, candidates Holmes and Anzadeh obviously coming first if you wish to. Hopefully that's equitable. Sorry, folks, I'm learning just as much as your professor is. Right. So moving on to the last question for this, and we're going to be beginning with candidate Yi. Right? Yeah, candidate Yi. So this last question is: an overwhelming number of students oppose the annual tuition increases, but there are only 3 student reps on the board. How would you work to fight tuition increases? Candidate Yi, you have 2 minutes.
Absolutely, and this is a question that is on many students' minds right now. For one, I think it is really vital to be able to address the funding from the province and support that the province has provided. I think for one, tuition or operational grants from the province have been steadily going down over the years. And I think it is really vital to be able to work with student societies to lobby the provincial government in order to get more operational funding as well. I think one of the key pieces as well is to be able to look at tuition more comprehensively. Most tuition actually goes to the faculties, so we need to also be creating more transparency around faculty budgets. Faculty are currently not required to disclose their budgets, and I think it is really vital to be able to create transparency around that as well. I think we need to create very comprehensive conditions in which the tuition increases are able to go forward and be able to have a direct pulse on students. Students right now are filling out these tuition consultations and they're putting tons of emotional labor into filling these tuition consultations out, and we just keep rubber stamping these. We need to be able to consider all the different intersections and be able to create a comprehensive affordability plan that looks at all the different costs that students are also considering. And I will vehemently oppose tuition increases as it is right now.
Candidate Korniashek, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry, yeah, I'm just opening the platform. So student financial availability and accessibility, and especially student tuition increases is one of the 4 pillars of my platform. So AMS and the past students representatives have been working very hard on managing the annual 2 to 6% tuition increases, both for the domestic students and the international students. However, it seems like they haven't been too successful, and that's one of the biggest controversies around candidates for Board of Governors. Such an increase in tuition does not only affect the financial future of Canadian students, but it also puts a huge burden on the international students, those applying for first year and those already studying. Interestingly, a 100% decrease in tuition is approximately $5 million in costs to the university. It's a big number, so just cutting costs like that is not something that we can do, considering the large population or student body. So with my platform, I actually plan to, first of all, strengthening the assets of university that our university currently has to ensure that the revenue streams are coming freely and steadily through those assets. Secondly, I would like to establish a better way of communicating the increases in tuition to students. So again, going back to the point that I've mentioned before, explaining why and what it will go towards. Many students feel unsupported because they're unable to find out what they need it for. As Georgia also mentioned, it is very fair to be representative and to make sure that we don't put the burden of telling us what we need to do on just students and putting the burden of checking stuff on them. We need to deliver it to them and make sure that. Thank you.
Candidate Korniashek. Candidate Holmes, 2 minutes on tuition increases.
Topic everyone cares the most about, tuition increases coming up this April. So I will say, for everything you see me do in open, I'm doing about 2 or 3 more things in closed doors. I have pushed as hard as I possibly can to get commitments on the affordability plan. I have made it clear, if there's not a framework for an affordability plan at this April meeting, I will not only vote against tuition, I will vote against the university budget. Because it is clear in the provincial mandate letter that we must be creating a more accessible university for everyone in British Columbia. That is the direction the government has given us, and that's in our mandate letter, and so we need to act on it. Now, I also want to build off of what candidate Yi said, which is there is a role for government here. We have to remember that fundamentally, if you want to change the nature of tuition, Ubyssey is not going to do that. Ubyssey doesn't have the ability to do that. We are much more reliant on tuition than we have ever been if you look at the history of universities, and provincial governments need to step in more and they need to fund more. And that's why one of the things that I've specifically tried working a lot on is making sure that we get all of our graduate student seats at Ubyssey funded. Right now, Ubyssey has about, I think it's 150% or plus FTE of our graduate students, which means that for every graduate student that is getting funded, there's about half of a graduate student that isn't. This is just not right. This is something that we have to fix. We have to be doing more advocacy. On voting against tuition increases, I will say in the time that I've been VP Academic and on the blog, we've been increasing the amount of votes against. I've been building relationships with governors over the past 2 years. I am prepared to get huge commitments out of this tuition increase vote, whether it goes in the affirmative or in the negative. And I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that we have a good tuition consultation this year, that we have a student affordability plan that comes forward, and that ultimately that we're building a budget that prioritizes students before anything else, because the best interest of students is the best interest of the university.
Thank you, Candidate Holmes. Candidate Alamzadeh, you have 2 minutes on tuition.
Start with saying that I will oppose the tuition increases, and especially coming from the east of Canada, where we had a very fixed tuition, as well as we had the options of having having an installment of what we want. So I don't see why Ubyssey cannot implement those kind of tuition strategy. But I guess with that being said, as other people said, that we need government funding, which is currently is very low. So I would, the good thing about the Board of Governors is that there are people from the government, and we can discuss with them that how it is important to fund the post-secondary education, and especially if they do constantly increase the tuition, they will not attract much of the brain as other competitive developed countries are doing now. So we can, like, I'm kind of the person who is also question a lot of fundamentals that I would ask. Why do you think we as a Canada have not been able to develop vaccine for COVID, while a lot of other developed countries has been doing it? So we have to discuss the value. Why? Because maybe a lot of time government does not prioritize the funding because they don't see a lot of aspects of the importance. So it is also important, and those discussion forum, we discuss with them why it is important. What would be the future of Canada without not supporting the post-secondary school? So I will bring those discussions at the board level. So it's not just saying that, hey, you have to do this or not to do this. But also another thing is that UBC have to find other restructure its finance in a way that they can bring more revenue, that more partnership, that reduce the burden on the students. And that has been, I have implanted in at GSS, and I believe that other universities have done that. So
thank you, Kendall. And rounding us out, Canada Yoshimura, do you need a repeat?
No, that's fine. Thank you. I just want to reiterate a lot of what's been said. Is this is a key issue for students, and affordability is arguably one of the most pressing issues that affects all students, especially during this time of COVID-19. I want to say first off that we need to be careful when we talk about vehemently opposing tuition increases under any circumstances, because governors have a fiduciary and legal duty to do what's in the best financial interest of the university. Making comments like that can cause questions about whether or not you're actually able to keep that fiduciary duty. If the fiduciary duties are actually in the best case of the university, and the only possible honors have a legal responsibility to vote for them. Now, granted, I don't see that being the case. And this is something that the current Board of Governors reps have talked about multiple times. University must provide evidence that a tuition increase is the only absolutely necessary thing to gain funding. We are reliant on them, but we must prove that there are not other areas where we can draw funding from, that will not impact students negatively. I think the university must be ultimately more transparent with how that funding is used, especially with how the faculties use that money, because a large majority of the increases do go to the faculties who are no longer in obligation to release their budgets and don't do so. Now, granted, I'm not going to be it as a single governor, as a student governor, but I can advocate for more transparency in any way possible. And the affordability plan has been mentioned. Any corresponding tuition increase must also be accompanied by an affordability plan. And I know that current governments have been doing work on that, and it's not an easy process, but I will not even begin to consider any increases to tuition until that plan is put in place. It's comprehensive, it's multi-year, that addresses the significant financial impacts students are having and talks about ways to mitigate that. Whether it be directly tied to how we can find more funding to students, to cost of living, to work experiences as well. We must make sure that these are absolutely necessary, and oppose them to the university cannot show that they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada Yoshimura. There's a minor fact check coming from my editors for Canada Alamzadeh. You mentioned that there are government representatives on the Board of Governors. That's not entirely accurate, since they're government appointed representatives with fiduciary responsibility. So yeah, just a minor fact check of that. And moving on into the 3 minutes of open debate for for tuition increases. So keeping in mind what we've raised previously about equitable time and things like that, please try to keep your times to. I'll make sure that you stay less than a minute. But yeah, you want to kick us off? Canada Alamzadeh? Would you like to kick us off?
Yeah. No, sorry. Thank you very much for bringing up that. I guess I didn't use the correct word, but I'm aware of what the Board of Governors composed of. I guess that again, I want to really reiterate that really the important is that we look at the framework, we look at our source of revenue, and also we look at our way of expenditure. We look at there are a lot of, because as a VP and as a senator, I have had this opportunity that the Ubyssey presented their budget for me, so I have that understanding, and a lot of thought comes to my mind, but unfortunately, I wasn't much in the position to bring really, or at least my recommendation be taken seriously. But I think that there are quite a room that a lot of changes can be happen, and it is feasible that no increased fee can be implemented, and also we get into the PhD tuition waiver. Thank you.
I want to ask Dante about where he wants this funding to, or these other sources of funding to come from, because as Ubyssey draws its funding largely from tuition or tuition from students, as well as the operational funding, I think it's notable to note that 90% of the university's operating budget, it used to be in the 1970s, it used to be 90% funded by the provincial government. However, this is reduced to 36%. So I wanted Dante to elaborate a little bit more on this, on these external sources of funding as well.
Absolutely, and I'm not talking necessarily about external sources of funding, I'm talking about money that Ubyssey already has. So there have been recent years in which the university has run a surplus with their budget. So that money is somewhere and it's going somewhere. Something that's happened this year is the provincial government has actually given some leeway to Ubyssey to run deficits in their budget. And if that means doing so currently during a time of hardship, to allow students to be able to at least have 1 year off of these tuition increases to try and regain financial standing, I think that's important. So yes, the government funding has been going down, but there are other messages. But I have a question for you, Georgia. You talk about the comprehensive affordability plan, and I just want to know what you've done during your time as the VP at the AMS to put that forward. Submissions from the AMS have gone down very drastically this year. The AMS never formally opposed to the board the athletics and recreation fees. So I'm curious to hear what you've been.
Well, unfortunately, there won't be time for you to answer that, but I'll give you 15 extra seconds and then 30 seconds to Holmes and Korniashik to end up this period, because I want to make sure people will have time to say things. So, candidate E, you have 15 seconds to respond to the question.
This has also been something that we brought up in our presentation to the Board of Governors in September as well, and I think it's very key to be able to look at all sources of costs for students as well. So I think we've been also comprehensively been looking at sources of tuition, housing costs, textbook costs, all of that as well. So we have also been working on this. I can also address the athletics.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I know that this is an awkward format, but debates are awkward. And so then finally, I'll give 30 seconds apiece to candidate Holmes. 30 seconds total. So 15 to Holmes and 15 to Korniashik. So Korniashik, your mic's already on, so do you want to go?
All right, sure. Yeah, I'll be very quick. So I just wanted to kind of highlight Dante's words about it being crucial to make sure that the students know what they're paying for. But on the second topic, I would just like to mention that read my platform. There's an interesting proposition about extra revenue streams.
Thank you, candidate Korniashik, and candidate Holmes. Please round this out.
Yeah, I think finally, one of the most important things that's going to be coming up in this year is that the BC NDP government has committed to a funding review. As somebody who's been a student advocate for 4 years and understands the funding system of our university, probably better than most of the candidates here, I think I could say that. That is what I'm probably going to dedicate a great deal of my time to, is making sure that the board is putting forward proposals with student societies, with unions, to make sure that we get increased funding for the post-secondary institution, because that's super important too.
Thank you, candidate Holmes. Okay. So, thank you for bearing with me through that. Now we're moving on to audience questions. And let me tell you, there's some real spicy ones. So, I want to start off with a pointed question. And for those of you who are wondering, there's the Ubyssey questions are for people at large, but the audience questions can be directed to particular members. This one is to candidate Holmes, who will have a minute to respond, and then we'll give a minute to anyone else who wants to say something, maybe minute 90, minute 30, depending on how spicy it gets. So, candidate Holmes, the question is, equity, diversity, and inclusivity, and ensuring student elections are fair, accessible, and equitable. So why is Max running again for BOG, especially after many, many years in the Senate and AMS? Max, do you think that you continuing to run in these elections over 5 years in this school is taking up space by blocking vulnerable and marginalized populations, students from those populations, from participating in elections? So you have 1 minute to respond.
I think it's a great question. And honestly, if Jeannie was rerunning this year, I wouldn't be running, because I do think that we need more diversity in our representation. Ultimately, I think one of the most important things that I have dedicated my time to is mentorship of student leaders on campus. I have tried my best. I have met with countless student Senate candidates over this past week. I have done my best within caucus in Senate to try and diversify that body and to bring in candidates who aren't necessarily traditional candidates and to encourage them to run. I will say one of the reasons that I am rerunning this year is that I do think that it's important to have somebody with the 2 years of experience that I do have at the Board of Governors table. One thing that happens if you have 2 new governors come in, because we have had Jeannie for the past 4 years, is that you lose a lot of institutional knowledge. You lose all of the closed conversations that have happened that none of these people have been here for. And I wish we could have more transparent conversations, but those conversations do exist. And so ultimately, I think that more time in mentorship, and I absolutely agree that we do need to have greater diversity in our candidate pools. And it's something I've continually pushed for and tried to mentor as many students as possible and to encourage them to run.
Thank you. Right, and so now for that directed question, if any of the other candidates would like to take 30 seconds to say something, you're free to. Candidate Almzadeh, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Yes. I would like to say something. I really appreciate the leadership that Max put forward. But regarding that, the consistency of what's happening, I guess that could be achieved with proper transitioning from previous student representative to the new one. And all of the people have this intellectual ability and perhaps leadership ability to carry forward what has been done in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Almzadeh. Anyone else want to take them 30 seconds?
Sure. I'll just address Georgia Yee's comment before.
No, it's particularly to this question. No, it's to this question.
Exactly. All right, then just give me a second, then I will not say anything. Thank you.
Gotcha. Candidate Yee, Ubyssey Morrow?
I think this really does go back to the point that I pointed out before about how are we engaging with the students who are not currently engaged with student politics? How do we engage with the students who are who often see themselves in historically marginalized positions as well? So I think that this is a very good point to bring up when we are considering who to vote for and how we're uplifting new and fresh perspectives at the board.
Thank you, Candidate Yee. Ubyssey Morrow, 30 seconds, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take less than a second. So I think it is difficult to balance the need for continuity because of the steep learning curve that there is on the board. There's a need for a governor who's able to mentor other students, at the same time encouraging those who might be marginalized and can bring diverse viewpoints to the board and encouraging them to run. It's a lot more complicated than meets the faith.
Thank you, Candidate Ubyssey Morrow. Okay, so moving on to the next audience question. We've got one. All right, this is there's a little bit of a preamble. So in November, and this is going to be going from I think reverse alphabetical order, starting with Candidate Yee. In November of 2020, a Canadian House of Commons subcommittee concluded that the Chinese government's treatment of the Uyghur ethno-religious minority constituted genocide. Yesterday, Canada's Parliament voted to officially recognize it as such. Do you personally agree with the findings from the committee, and what will you do to build on Ubyssey's track record of advancing human rights following divestment from apartheid South Africa, divestment from fossil fuels, and the AMS condemnations of human rights abuses in Hong Kong? Candidate Yee, you have 1 minute.
Yes, I am very heartened, or not heartened. I think that this is something that is vitally important to recognize the human rights abuses that is currently occurring against the Uyghur ethno-religious minority as well. However, I think it is also very vital to also recognize that there's that Ubyssey as an institution has had a long history has a long history of being a colonial institution as well, and we must take our own steps to be able to dedicate truth and reconciliation efforts and properly resource these as well. I think that it is also very important to recognize that Ubyssey needs to take action to protect Uyghur students, to protect students in Hong Kong, which is why I've also been advocating for a review of policy SC12 and advocating and serving on the policy review committee for policy.
Thank you. Do you need to repeat?
Yes, sorry, I was just doing some things. Do you mind repeating the question just so that I don't miss any details?
No worries. In November of 2020, a Canadian House of Commons subcommittee concluded that the Chinese government's treatment of the Uyghur ethno-religious minority constituted genocide. Yesterday, Canada's Parliament voted to officially recognize it as such. Do you personally agree with the findings from the committee, and what will you do to build on Ubyssey's track record of advancing human rights following divestment from apartheid South Africa, divestment from fossil fuels, and the AMS condemnations of human rights abuses in Hong Kong? You have 1 minute, Candidate Koniashik.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. I do agree with the findings. It is a very sad occurrence that, in the time of the 21st century, stuff like that still happens. But I guess it's an issue that we have to face face to face and deal with it. I believe, and from my experience, Ubyssey and Vancouver, especially as a city, has been one of the most diverse and human rights oriented cities and universities. Therefore, I do believe that Ubyssey is on a good track of increasing that. There is still more improvement to be done. I couldn't give you the most details because I do believe I have been focusing my research and my platform on the inclusion of Indigenous people. However, that strategy also applies to the other minority groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Koniashik. It will be noted that you didn't answer the question, but you did acknowledge that. So the latter half. So Candidate Holmes, would you like the question again?
No, thanks so much. So just to answer the question quickly, yes, it is genocide. That is what the findings have been. That's what the UN and multiple organizations have come out and said. We can't really skirt this question. That's what's happening. And so we need to look at, as a university, what can we do? First off, as a university, I think we need to make sure that in our exchange agreements, we're doing everything that we can to protect the rights of students across the world, to make sure that their academic freedom is protected, that freedom of expression is protected. We have a long history of creating, I think, protest movements around the world. And I think that we have to make sure that our students, no matter where they study, they have the same rights as they would if they were studying right here at Ubyssey. And so I think that's one of the most important things. On building on the commitment around divestment and other things, one thing to understand is we do operate in a different legal environment. It may be necessary if people wanted us to build on this further, to look at those legal requirements, because I will say that the university is in a different position than it was with apartheid divestment and what the legislation was then. But I am committed to continue learning on this issue and continue making sure that the board is trying to address it.
Thank you, Candidate Holmes. Moving on to Candidate Alamzadeh. You have 1 minute to respond to the question. Do you need reading?
Yes, I agree with the committee decision. It's genocide as well. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna advocate at the board level that we take a stand, and also we make our position on that. That do we see also? I guess do we see this as a genocide or not? So we're gonna make a public announcement that where we stand on this issue, as did the government of Canada. And also the next step would be that we urge, at the university, I'm hoping that I advocate, we urge the university, especially with the external of the university, to advocate at the government level that they talk with the governments of those countries and negotiate with the government of those countries to resolve those issues. There are a lot of ties between these countries, and a lot of influence can be done. Or if not resolvable, maybe look at the other ways. Yeah. Okay, I'm done, or I have time?
No, you're done. Yeah, so thank you, candidate Alamzadeh, and now round us out, candidate Agosti Moro.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll start off by directly answering the question. First of all, yes, absolutely. Who might argue with the government of Canada, the United Nations, and a multitude of other governmental and non-governmental organizations that have said that this is a genocide? It's clear there's some serious human rights abuses going on. In terms of what I will do as a governor, I think it's important to take a step back in any of UBC's business dealings and examining who the university chooses to align itself with, who or what. And something like divestment, for example, something my platform is pushing for the acceleration of the timeline for divestment within, of course, the legal and financial constraints. But I think, as Max mentioned, it's something that's come up on the Senate a lot, is ensuring that our students are protected when going overseas, that they are safe and experience the same human rights that they receive here in Canada as they do overseas. Student safety cannot be overstated, and neither can our reputation as a university for supporting human rights.
Thank you, candidate. And that'll bring us to the end of this debate. I wish we could answer all of the questions in the chat. There really are some good ones, but I assure you that they'll be continuing on, and hopefully the candidates will be on the various social media platforms and such to address these things afterwards, late into the night. You can make a party out of it. So I want to end things off with closing statements from everybody. So candidate Agosti Moro, give us your 30-second goodbye.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much for being here tonight. You've heard directly from the candidates. I had the opportunity to hear our platforms, and I feel I have a track record for hard work, advocacy for students, and results from lobbying both faculty and university administration. And I hope that I've shown you tonight that I have the knowledge, experience to earn your vote for your Board of Governors representative. For more information, you can reach out to me directly. You can visit my website at votedante.ca. All my contact info is there, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the debates tomorrow and at the great debate. Thanks.
Thank you, candidate Agosti Moro. Candidate Alamzadeh, your 30-second farewell.
Participating. I also have extensive experience and dedication, a long record of dedication and leadership, and a lot of changes that I brought to the Ubyssey. But also I want to acknowledge the fact that it is not only one student can bring the change, it is all of our job, and all of our action that each individual of us is taking is necessary for bringing all this action. And I encourage you also to always participate in surveys, because they are very important for implementing your voices. And happy voting.
Thank you, candidate Alamzadeh. Candidate Holmes, your 30 seconds.
Yes. I think the last thing I might just address is, one of the biggest reasons I'm running for re-election for my third term is, simply put, I think I'm not done fighting for students yet. I want to make sure that we can continue to fund, for example, the Ubyssey Anti-Racism Task Force, making sure that we're funding the Climate Emergency Task Force, and building off of so much of the work that has been done by our community over the past year. And I want to continue to be a champion of that. If you want to learn more about my platform and the multiple wins I've gotten for students over the years, you can go to voteholmes.ca. And thank you to the Ubyssey and the Elections Committee for the great moderation and event tonight.
Candidate Holmes. Candidate Korniashik, you have your 30-second farewell.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your time. We really appreciate it. 2021 and 2022 will be a challenging year, challenging academic year. It is a year when more than crisis reaction is needed. It is a time when Ubyssey must establish a strong ground for the years to come. My candidacy will ensure a progressive, enthusiastic, critical thinking approach to the governing of Ubyssey. Make sure you save the date, March 1st to 5th, and vote Damir Korniashik for Board of Governors and Senate so we can begin constructing excellence together. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good night.
Thank you, candidate Korniashik.
Thank you all, everybody, for coming out to this debate. I want to continue fighting for students. I want to continue empowering students as well. This next year, I want to be able to address these issues of affordability, addressing the climate emergency, equity and decolonization, and improving access to online and hybrid learning, and as well as being able to create a supportive community. If you want to find out more about my platform, please search up votegeorgiayeat.com, and I am tomorrow at the Senate debate and at the Great Debate.
Thank you, candidate Yi. And that is your blog debate for tonight, everyone. So thank you all to the candidates. Big round of applause. This raucous. Oh wow, everybody! Wow, just an overwhelming amount of applause. It's amazing. So thank you all, and hope you have a good night. So now we'll pass it on over to Isabel. So we can do. I think the AMS is doing one last giveaway thing for a debate.
Yes, for those of you who managed to stay for the whole 3.25 almost hours, congratulations. I'm just double checking the list to make sure we don't give all our prizes to folks who run the campus. But thank you all for coming again. I'm just going to double check the list and then do it. And thanks, of course, to the Ubyssey, as always, for their lovely moderation of my bedtime. Lovely moderation of the debate. And just making sure.
Thank you.
Okay. I think this is everyone. Okay. Share screen. I'm going to try this again. Okay. I'm going to try it on my screen. So for one of the gift cards, Theodore, please send your email. So gift card, you just send it to me on private chat. That'd be great. Okay. Then technology. Okay, another gift card is for and then 2 Echo Dots. All the better to listen to the great debate with. Saturday, 10 a.m. onwards. Okay, Peter. One Echo. And last one. Oh, another one. Lovely. Okay, so if you four could just send me your email addresses, that would be great. And be sure to tune in again tomorrow. More prizes, more debate, more fun with Zoom. And of course, on Saturday is the great debate, where there will be even greater prizes. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye, everyone. Check out Ubyssey News on Twitter. Check out the Ubyssey for coverage. Look at the Ubyssey in general.